I was wondering. It's all right.
Much closer.
I'm like a cat. I'm joking. You know, my like gesticulations are gonna. We're gonna need to get you like a non-slip. Sticky.
It's kind of hard. They don't go off that easily.
Yeah, you're right.
You're all right.
Janice, are we ready?
We are supposed to wait until the.
6:30, everybody on?
I mean, it should be. I can check it once.
Okay, check. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Town of Camden Select Board meeting. A couple of items of housekeeping. First of all, we're utilizing a brand new audio-visual system tonight for the first time. There are new cameras here. Hi. And also, we have some new microphones, so we're hoping everything will work well. If not, I'm sure I'll get texts, but that's one. It'll be on both channels, 1303 at home as usual, and YouTube. Before I get into the agenda, I want to make one modification to it, please. Because of the weather situation, I'd like to table item 7, which is the presentation by Ransom Consulting. So I'd like to have a motion to table that, please.
I'll make a motion. Do we table the Ransom presentation?
All those in favor? 5-0. Thank you very much. With that, we'll head into our agenda for the February 12th, 2019 Select Board meeting. To start off with any public input on non-agenda items. Does anybody from the floor like to make a comment on a non-agenda item, please? Seeing no hands, we'll go on to the next item, which is Select Board reports. Would anybody like to start?
Nothing this evening.
I was just in Florida for a few days. It's always interesting to see municipalities that are so different from ours. One of the things that I noticed at the airport was a lot of solar panels in parking lots, and in Florida too. But it was something that I think we talked about years ago, and at that point they really weren't doing it in New England at all. But it was just see that at the airport, they had, not in Florida, but in Maine actually, they had a huge portion of their parking lot was covered with solar panels, and with all the parking lots that we have in Camden, I was thinking maybe we could do that.
Absolutely, cool. Cool. Okay. Mark, you want to start with anything?
A couple things. There's a new Opera House flyer. I talk about the Opera House every week, new flyer that's out. A lot of great events. We had a particularly strong showing last week during Winterfest. The Mallet Brothers, Oshima Brothers, two brother bands show sold out. Great crowd, great response. A really, really great night for the Opera House. Coming up this Friday is Blue Light Cafe, which is on the 3rd floor, and our very own Dave Morrison will be promoting his new poetry book Friday night. So if you have a chance to drop by, it's a lot of fun. And secondly, the Camden Select Board, including our town manager, competed in the toboggan races this weekend against the town of Rockport. And for the 3rd year in a row, your Camden representatives were victorious in their race. So
I think it was by 7/10 of a
I
second.
wish I had the picture to pull up right
Bob's
now.
picture.
Easy.
Maybe next time.
I love
might
that
have the
picture.
Apple TV all set up, but I-
Next time we'll show you the picture of the 4 people on toboggan with really scared looks in their faces.
yeah, and it's
Concentration.
That was
it's
great.
basically 10 seconds of pure terror, but it's worth it.
It is. Thank you.
And so I should say thanks to Holly and Beth for a very successful weekend. This is the first time I think since 2014 they sold out all the available slots for the toboggan races. So it was very busy, and one of the most interesting things, if you've never done it before, it's great fun. But this year, because there was no snow in Hosmer, when you came down the chute, you slid almost all the way across the whole lake before your sled stopped, or your toboggan stopped, and it was quite a ride. So congratulations to everybody at the Snow Bowl who did all the work for putting on a great festival.
Thank you, Mark.
Excellent. And I was actually going to speak to the Opera House and their success during the week. Not only was there the success of the Mallet Brothers show, but the Pino and Augustine, all family-friendly clown duo, was well talked about from families at the school that my husband works at and throughout town. So I just think Mark said it well, but that it's nice to see the Winterfest kind of spreading throughout the week and continuing to bring momentum and programs for all kinds of families and different demographics. So that's exciting.
Thank you, Jenna. Thank you. Only thing I report on this evening was some activity that actually I'm a liaison with the town with the Building Design Committee. Mark was Friday. He was also at the meeting recently discussing the construction of our new middle school. Just a couple of points to make. One, they are very actively involved in an attempt to raise some $500,000 worth of monies to pay for some of the items that were needed for the school. Some were cut from the budget, to maintain the budget. They're only at about $80,000 so far, but you'll be hearing more about that as we go on the weeks. On the construction side, it's always a challenge, of course. They're having issues, as every construction project does. In net today, they are approximately halfway through their contingency budget and have used up all of the float in the construction. Float is a time contractors put into a schedule to allow for things to occur. So that puts a lot of challenge on the school board in going forward. Unfortunately, one of the change orders they had already approved is going way over its original budget, and we don't have all the answers as to why yet. It's a winter conditions contingency, which means basically doing protective stuff during the cold weather to tent things in and heat things and that kind of thing. That one, and two, the school board had inadvertently not budgeted for the premium bond payment for the construction loan and taking that also out of construction contingency, which net to date means that they've used, like I said, about half the construction contingency, and they're working very hard to monitor that. But it's construction's not easy. Anybody says it is, has never done it. That's about all I have on the status of items. With that, we'll unless anybody has anything else, we'll move forward on to the approval of the board minutes for January 22nd, 2019. Any comments on the minutes?
One comment in the minutes, Rick Seibel's name it's S-E-I instead of S-I-E, and that's throughout the minutes. He's in a lot of places there. That's the only change I saw.
Okay, okay. Any other comments on the minutes? I have a motion to accept.
I make a motion, we accept the minutes.
All those in favor? 5-0. Beth, before you came in, we tabled item 7 on the agenda, which is the Ransom Consulting presentation because of weather. And that was voted 5-0 also. With that, we'll go to the fourth item, which is consent agenda. On the consent agenda tonight, we have 4 items. The approval of a victual license for a fresh restaurant at 1 Bayview Landing. The second one is consideration of appointments of Polly Saltonstall, Brian Robinson, and David Lyman to the Inland Harbor Ordinance Working Group. The third is consideration of appointment Eileen Kleinman to the Historic Resource Committee. And lastly, consideration of appointment of John R. French Jr. to the Budget Committee. Do I hear any disagreement with the items on the consent agenda?
None.
Hearing none, the items are hereby accepted. And we'll go on to public hearings for liquor licenses. I'm going to read the instructions for the public hearings for issues like ordinances and licenses. The purpose of the public hearing is for the public to express their opinion and for the board to gain a greater understanding of the issues before us. We ask, 1, each speaker come to the microphone so your comments can be heard. The meeting is being televised and recorded, as you know. Second, each speaker to state his name, his or her name and address. And finally, each speaker direct all your comments through me, the chair. As a matter of courtesy, please, the board asks you to be no verbal comments or applause from the audience in response to remarks. It's a thing of respect. After everyone public wishing to speak has done so, I'll close the public hearing. And at that point, the select board will discuss the item once the public hearing is closed. The board will not take further comment from the public unless a board member has a question of a member of the public or staff. Please keep your comments brief. And in terms of public hearing issues, we have 3 tonight. And I think I'll open them all to public hearing one at a time. The first is the application of Fresh Restaurant at 1 Bayview Landing for a renewal of Class 1 restaurant liquor license. Is there anybody here that would like to talk to that license, for, against, or just make a comment? Okay, we'll go to the second, which is the application of the Whitehall Inn at 52 High Street for a renewal Class 5 bed and breakfast liquor license. Similarly, is there anybody here who would like to speak to that license, or for, against, or just comment? Lastly, the application of Camden Windward House at 6 High Street for renewal of a Class 1A hotel liquor license. Any comments from the public who would like to speak for, against, or just comment? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and open the discussion to the select board members to have any discussion on Fresh Restaurant first.
No discussion.
We'll make a motion to accept
Make a motion that we authorize the
Class 1.
Class 1 license for Fresh Restaurant. Let me get to the particular verbiage.
Second.
All's in favor? 5-0. Is any questions or comments from the select board on the application of Whitehall Inn at 52 High Street for a Class 5 bed and breakfast liquor license?
Make a motion, if everyone's ready for that, that we accept the application of the Whitehall Inn at 52 High Street for a renewal of a Class V bed and breakfast liquor license.
Second.
All's in favor? And lastly, the application of the Camden Windward House at 6 High Street for the renewal of a Class 1A hotel liquor license.
Make a motion that we authorize the Camden Windward House for renewal Class 1A hotel liquor license, the application.
Second.
All's in favor? 5-0. Thanks so much. That was easy. And the next one is kind of a fun thing for us. We don't get a chance very often to have fun things sometimes, and this one is really fun. Because we get to, we don't get to honor people who've done so much for the town. I've only been on the select board for a year and a half, but I've been associated with the town for a lot longer, lived here for longer than that. But, you know, you really don't get a flavor for how great the staff of this town is, and its people, its directors, its town manager, and others until you see it day to day. It's really, really impressive. You should all be proud. And tonight, we get to honor, the select board gets to honor a person whom we all know and sometimes love, as long as you're not getting pulled over by him. And that's Randy Gagnon. Randy, would you come up, please? Just so everybody can see your shining face again. For all of you who don't know, Randy has completed 30 years of service to our town. You know, most people
Been
don't
like Mr. Popular for the last couple of weeks.
That's quite all right. You're not doing your job, you know, it's like they say in boating, if you haven't hit a rock, you haven't used your boat. Well, if you haven't gotten in trouble as a police chief, the same thing happens. But seriously, 30, you know, in the real world, nobody does anything for 30 years anymore. It's just not unheard of. But we have Randy, and we have a couple following you very closely, I understand, with also 30 years coming up. But from my distant perspective, and I'm not public safety oriented, I've never been in it, as I know Mark has, and to an extent Taylor on the EMS side. But it's impressive. And I have never, ever heard one complaint by any single person, even those of us who've been pulled over for doing whatever, by the police department.
Paid them all well.
You've never heard a complaint about the
I
police
could tell you
department
some
ever?
stories from high school.
Complaint? Never heard a complaint.
Oh.
Well, oh yeah, I heard one complaint. They're not.
Runs with a different circle
Yeah,
than you do.
they don't.
So, maybe he hasn't been listening to me.
There's a contingent that thinks you should have speed control on every street, every minute of the day for 24 hours. Those I have heard. But in consideration, I'll let others speak, but we wanted to give you this congratulations and from the select board. And can't say how much we appreciate for what you've done and hope to see you for another 30 years.
Well, it speaks volumes for the town as an employer to have so many people that have worked here, as I have. Rick Seibel here. A lot of people have made it 30 plus years. And, you know, everything I've got is because the town of Camden has been such a great employer. They've given me every opportunity in my career. The support has always been great. Spent a lot on my training, so you know, if I had another 30 years to give you, I'd give it to you, but I'll try it for at least another 10.
I just want to say that, you know, even being a person that doesn't agree with you 100% of the time on things, I've just been, you know, but little things about cars and that sort of thing. But
you drove a Dodge Charger.
Yes, I did. I think it was karma or fate or something that brought me, and I got a Dodge Charger accidentally as a rental car while I was in Florida last week, and they were like, we upgraded you to a Dodge Charger, and I was like, I chose Ford Focus or Nissan Versa.
Last week we received a speed board from the state of Maine, and it has a solar panel on it. So
Oh my
there
gosh,
you
so
go.
it's kind of evening
There
itself
you
out.
go.
But
Stars, everything was aligned right. So.
But you are one of the easiest people to get along with that I've probably ever met. And I think you do an outstanding job balancing all of the different perspectives in town and just being pleasant and not taking things personally. And I always feel so good about being able to tell people, like, to bring concerns to you or, you know, parking
Send it
or
to
this
his
or that.
email.
What's that?
Send it to his email.
And just to know that, you know, that they're going to encounter you, and it's a very nice feeling. And I just think you do a really great job.
Well, I try, and it's easy when you have great staff, too.
I might add, I've mentioned it numerous times, but I've worked with the LA County Sheriff's Department, came here from California, worked for them for over 31 years. And when I first got on the board, I went over to Randy's office and just asked questions. You know, how do you do this? Why do you do this? Why do you do this? And if I knew what I was talking about in every case, which I don't, he passed flying colors 100%. Everything he does is well thought out, believes in training, believes in management of his officers really well. I could find no flaws whatsoever. And I tried. I asked him lots of tough questions, and he was great. It's just we are so fortunate to have somebody so knowledgeable, so dedicated, and work so hard to make sure that we have the best police department, I think, in the region. So thank you for all that you do.
And if I may, I've known Randy for years, since I was a very young reporter working at the then Camden Herald, and he was so kind to me. I was just in my early 20s, and you don't really know the police at that point, and I would just sit in your office, and you taught me so much, and I loved talking to you, and just really have always appreciated that attitude, and I think that's reflected in the commentary of my fellow board members. But it means a lot to me, and I always remember it. Thank you for everything that you do.
I think everyone hit the nail on the head, and it's easy for people to pick apart police departments as the bad guy because they've got such a tough job to do. But I really think that you've done a fantastic job at setting a standard for true community policing, and being accessible and making police departments feel like the nice guy.
It's because I gave you my cell phone number.
I wasn't going to say why.
It's been great working with everybody, and the boards have been, in both towns that I work in, very supportive of everything we do. Give us good equipment, they give us good training. We don't want for anything, and that makes my job much easier when I can, have that type of support.
So I just want to say thank you, Randy. I can't even say how easy people like Randy make my job when you are able to come in and have somebody you can just trust completely, and you're working with them to solve problems. It's so great, and you're great to work with. And in an era where almost every police department in the country is having a hard time, recruiting people and finding people, Randy always seems to be able to find people out there because they want to work for him. He gives them great opportunities.
Don't jinx us.
Yeah, that's all right. But I credit you with that. I think you do a great job with it. You make it a great place to work, and you have a great team behind you. And
thank you.
It's great because of your leadership.
Now my head's swelled, I won't be able to get out the door.
You won't be.
Nothing runs into my car tonight.
Just like where I wanted to give you thanks and for all your hard stuff, and keep going.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
We're going to hold you to that. All right. Thanks, Chief.
And no one park on the street tonight.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda would be an update on the farmers market, subject matter temporary location for 2019. Audra, do you want to take a?
Yeah, so I was hoping I would have a little more of an update than what I actually have, because I thought that the farmers market were meeting this weekend to kind of make a decision on what they wanted to do for the summer. But it looks like their meeting is this Saturday instead. So I only have kind of half of the update, which is the conversation that Jeremy Martin, the Planning and Development Director, and myself had with them. So we met them last Friday, and we kind of explained to them the cleanup project and why it looked like, the site was going to be unavailable for this summer. And they were understanding of the fact there's going to be construction there and machinery and materials and just, not an option for them for this year. So they're very understanding of that. And we talked about a number of different locations where they might want to locate to temporarily for this year. So, of course, we talked about the mill parking lot because that's where they were prior to moving to the tannery. And so we explained to them that the mill would be available, and the town is, we're doing a lease purchase agreement over it. So, it's really just kind of us figuring out if that's going to work for them, how we want to do that. We also offered the lot across the street, the former skate park on Knowlton Street. They weren't familiar with that lot, so I believe that they went and had a look at it after our meeting. We talked about the Snow Bowl. We talked about the area, Harbor Park and the amphitheater, potentially Atlantic Avenue. And we also talked about the public landing. So we gave them a number of different options. And we said to them, pretty much whatever you think is going to work best for you for the summer, get back to us, and then we'll help you to try to figure out logistically how we can make that work. So that's what they went away with. They went to look at a few sites that they were less familiar with. We're going to send them measurements for a couple of them so they can look at the setup and see what they need to do to configure the site so it would work for them. So really, that's the update at this stage. We should know, hopefully next week, what their choice is, and at that point, we're going to help them logistically figure out how to be there. We'll help with any publicity, we can help with signage, all those sorts of things to try to make it easier for them in a year where there's a little bit of disruption.
Okay. Okay.
Did you, or have we talked to like Steve Pixley or anybody like that about the heart? I mean, to me, it sounds like the public landing could be like a really awesome business opportunity for them. And I kind of like the idea of having that walkable in-town sort of feel during the summer. Is that, I'm sure there will be some people that would push back against the limited parking during, but I think if it were just for one season, but is that, I just didn't know if there are other unintended consequences of that, do we need to run that by?
I mean, I
guess we do Windjammer weekend there. So.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there is going to be a lot of those sort of logistical things that we'll need to work out. They were not very enthusiastic about the idea of the public landing because they were very concerned about parking for their customers. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's all up to them and what they think is going to work best. I think it's good that we were able to give them a wide variety of options. So, we'll see.
Good option.
Do you know what date they're shooting for to start their season off?
They want to start when they normally start, which I believe is in April.
Okay.
And are they going to stick to doing Wednesdays as well? Do you know?
Yes. Yeah. And there's sort of divided opinion on the Wednesday night market.
Okay. Tom, do you have a comment? Yeah, please. As usual, please come on, state your name and address, all that good stuff, if you don't mind.
Tom Ressick, 67 Rawson. My understanding is I saw part of a letter that there's also a guarantee, as much as you can do, I suppose, that they can return to the Tannery Park site in the following year. Is that correct?
Yeah, we talked about that, and we said that, this would only be for one season.
But was a guarantee given to them?
We said if they'd want to return to the tannery, then of course they can, because that's the long-term aim for that site to be where they're located.
That's all I wanted to know.
Thank you, Tom. Sure. Any other discussion or questions regarding the, I missed Mark. How can I miss you, Mark? I see you every day, bud.
Mark Haskell, I live up on Pearl Street. I have a couple of questions about the farmers market. Number one, I fully support it. I think it's a wonderful thing, and I'm glad we have it here. But has there been a discussion of a fee for the people coming in that are using it? We're going to be providing town space. We're going to be providing signage. We're going to be providing a lot of stuff for them. Is there a fee involved?
I think that that's a really good question. I think that's something that we need to have a broader discussion about, because there are a number of situations that are kind of similar to the farmers market where, we have groups leasing town-owned land, and I think that we need to have some sort of policy on how we charge for that and some sort of consistency around it. So I think that's a great point, Mark, and something that we need to look at pretty broadly.
Look at precedent as well.
And another concern or thought is I believe a vast majority of the people that are coming and selling are non-residents of Camden. So we are providing that. Okay, it's a good thing. Now on to another thing to do with it. Do we have any say over what the people come and sell? Can we have somebody come in selling pot-laced brownies and cookies at the farmer's market? Do we have any say on that?
It's marijuana regulations, a whole nother topic. The state law does not allow that.
But somebody comes in and they're selling, organic chicken or whatever kind of cookies and brownies that they sell. Do we have any knowledge? Do we have any?
We don't. It's completely separate from the town. They have their own governance and,
Something to be considered.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Yes, sir, please. Again, name and address if you would.
Hi, my name is Jeff Deck. I live at 31 Lime Rock Street. My wife and I are members of the Camden Farmers Market. We've been vending there This is our 4th year, and we've done both the Wednesday and the Saturday markets. I can say that the producers are definitely restricted in what they can sell based on the guidelines or the bylaws of the Camden Farmers Market, which were established a while back. It's available online on the Farmers Market website to the public. So if you want to take a look at that. I mean, as far as that concern goes, I don't think that there's any real precedent for knowing how that would be handled by the farmers market, but I think that it's unlikely in this culture and climate for that to start happening. I think that anybody who's a regular customer of the Camden Farmers Market knows exactly what's available there, and it doesn't really change that much from day to day. We vet our new vendors through a pretty thorough process. There are denials every year. It's a good organization to be with. I'm glad to hear that the town is providing opportunity for the vendors to try to find somewhere to be. It's very important for them at this time with their decision making. You know, leading into the season, they have other opportunities on Saturday mornings. There are a lot of other markets.
Absolutely.
It's prime time. The Camden Farmers Market in the farmers market circle is not really known as a great market for vendors. And I would like to see that change over time. I think that the Tannery site has been a big upgrade to the market. I think that all the attendees, the customers, and the vendors believe that. I really hope to be back there in the future if we stay with it. And I think that for this upcoming year, I think it's great that you guys are having discussion about it. I haven't been able to be involved with the market meetings thus far. Yeah, and I'm just here to say thanks for giving us an opportunity. I think we're a big asset. And I don't think that it's easy to think of like these farmers coming from outside this area, but a lot of the vendors have been with this market for a long time. They know people by the first name. They know their dogs. They know everything about them. They know where their kids are going to school, and it's part of the community, and I think we should keep it that way.
What area of do you do at the market? Can you tell us?
If you want. I don't think it's relevant.
No, just curious.
Yeah, we do baked goods.
Perfect.
Oh, great.
You came all this way, you might as well advertise.
Yeah, we use Maine grown. So.
Okay, good.
No, that's good for people to know that there are baked goods there. I think that
It
some
is.
people might not even know that. So,
No, yeah.
Well,
but people are watching right now. So,
What's your bakery called?
It's called Brazen
Raisin.
Baking.
You make grape bread. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Well,
so I've heard.
just never made
Now
it.
I remember. You live right next to Jen.
yes, 31 Lyra.
Lots of
Yep.
things.
He's also our ski school director.
oh,
Oh my
I
gosh.
missed the
Okay.
public comment period because I was a little bit torn about what to say tonight because I'm glad to hear that the farmers market thing is on track because I was a little discouraged to hear one person come up last week and just say, you know, I hope that we're making space for these folks. And I know that a couple years ago we had the opportunity to go to a different location. We had somebody else that was trying to lure us to actually a different town. And 2 select board members came to that meeting and they said, you know, we want you here. You guys are part of our community. And things have changed since then. Just like out at the Snow Bowl, we've had a lot of management changes while I've been there. And I probably shouldn't get into Snow Bowl right now, but I spent as much time as anybody behind that ticket desk besides one other person. And I'm happy to talk with any of you guys about numbers and what we should be doing in terms of pricing out there. I've worked in the industry over 20 years now. So, but I do think that it's important to, well, I thought Beth really had some good figures to bring to you, and I wasn't sure that it was really went in the direction that I think it should. And if there's going to be more visiting of the budget with Snow Bowl, I think it should happen, you know, so that we can execute the budgets that we plan for.
no doors are closed.
And I think also that, you know, that was on the agenda for 2 weeks in a row, and that I think sometimes people maybe hesitate to send us emails or maybe they don't find out about it until afterwards, but I'm sort of surprised a lot of the time at how few like emails or inquiries I get about decisions. So I would just like reiterate that I personally, and I think I can probably speak for everybody on the select board, I'm always happy to get emails, laying out arguments or telling us where we made mistakes. And a lot of the time I learn from that and say, wow, you know a lot more than I do about this. So
I mean, some of
feel
the
free
things-
to reach out.
Some of the stuff is good, I think. I think we should revisit the 2-hour ticket because I think that's
Sure.
a big boon for residents.
Sure.
I think that promotions for residents
Sure.
are great.
Sure. Like I said, no doors closed.
There's a bunch of other stuff too.
Thanks. I want to stick with the agenda regarding the tannery, of
Thank
course.
you.
But thank you and good luck. Can't wait to taste your bread. Anybody else wanted to speak to the tannery? I don't see anybody. So we will.
Oh, sorry.
I do. I just want to say, as regards to the farmer's market, my wife is a weekly participant in the farmer's market. She goes every week, every Saturday, and often a lot of Wednesdays. And it's really important to her. If I were to ever let something happen in the farmer's market, I would be in huge trouble at home. So, just want to make that allowance. If I don't show up one day and the farmer's market disappears, it's because my wife has done me in.
Oh.
I forgot the other part of the discussion. We talked about the future of the farmers market at the tannery site, and the two officers that were there, Marcia from Piecemeal Farm, who's the treasurer or secretary, and Jess Shepherd, who is, I forget which is vice, is she? Yeah. So they both want to participate in some of the planning that we do on the tannery. So they're going to be actively involved in future planning as well as figuring out this year.
Perfect. All right. With that, we'll move on then to the presentation by the planning board on some, what do we call them? CZOs? I love that. I haven't seen it before.
What is a CZO?
CZO. It's a CZO amendment.
Camden zoning ordinance.
Camden zoning ordinance.
I had never seen it abbreviated. I thought it was snoring.
So I guess I'll start, and then first I'll introduce Rosie Curtis. She's the planning board chair. She's been a great, planning board's really, I think, very active and proactive. They're thoughtful. They've been great to work with since I've been here. And we just now have another board member on board, so we're almost to a full board. And it's a really thoughtful,
Anybody wants to join? We've got
yeah, one more space.
Realize that.
Very thougpre group that we have on the board. And so for tonight, this is just a kind of let you know and asking you to move to make a motion to bring the zoning ordinances proposed changes that we have to a public hearing on the 26th. I know Janice is doing all the paperwork to move that forward. We had two issues that the two ordinance amendments that the planning board and I have been working on. One has been one would allow hotels in the village district to allow food service, restaurant food service to the general public, limited to their seating licensed as of January 1, 2019. There are 3 hotels in the community that would apply to, the Norumbega Inn, Camden Harbor Inn, and the Whitehall. Those are the 3 technically termed hotels in the zoning in the village district. The Whitehall Inn has a restaurant that they're grandfathered to use currently. This is their last year of allowing that grandfathered status to continue. The Camden Harbor Inn and Natalie's, obviously that's still in existence, so that's moving forward, as is. The Norumbega Inn does not have food service currently to the general public like the Whitehall and the Camden Harbor, and this would allow them to do that. We did have a number of discussions on it, and I'll let Rosie kind of touch base on some of those discussions before we had the public hearing. But at the public hearing, we took a lot of public comment from not a whole lot of people, honestly. I think there were like 11 or 12 people there total, but we took a couple hours of comment, it seemed like. In my opinion, the broad consent, the consensus from the group and the concerned citizens was that it was a good proposal and a good thing to do for the town. And then the final issue that we looked at was amending the erosion sedimentation control standards in the zoning ordinance to bring those more in line with, to bring them right in line with the state's erosion and sedimentation control law. And that had a public hearing as well on the 31st, and there was no public comment at all received on that. With that said, I'll let Rosie speak to something if you'd like to speak to it, if you'd like to.
Sure. The only thing I kind of wanted to add to this was I think we discussed it about 3 times anyways, right? And so the last time we had this public hearing, but the time before we also had some public comments, and we were considering changing the zoning. And we actually, one of the neighbours suggested doing an ordinance amendment and using the special exception process to do this, because it would allow neighbours and the people concerned to have more say over tailoring this to their precise needs. So we actually changed our approach based on the suggestion of somebody who came and talked to us about it, who'd be directly affected by this zoning change, which was great, fantastic. We would welcome that kind of participation. And I think the concerns that people had were whether the Zoning Board of Appeals would really listen to them when they express their concerns for peace and quiet, right, and noise at night and people doing whiskey shots on the back deck, and if there was a wedding, would that start to get rowdy? So there was lots of very legitimate concerns about making sure that the residential feel of the neighbourhoods didn't get disturbed. And again, we felt that we've got a good, intact Zoning Board of Appeals, and that was the appropriate place for this to get worked out, because then it could get tailored to the specific needs of the establishment and the neighbours. And there was some suggestion that we go further with this amendment and start putting restrictions on hours and whether they could serve lunch or dinner, and we didn't think it was appropriate to start micromanaging the process in that way, and that was more appropriately done by the ZBA. So that's that piece. The erosion control, I felt really strongly that should get sent to the vote and get voted on, because as design professionals we have to adhere to that anyway, so it's just bringing it into line with best practice.
So basically, just to go summary for everybody to understand, it's kind of a 2-step process which you've walked into now. One would be a zoning ordinance amendment, and then in addition to that, an entity so inclined would go to the zoning board for a special exemption permit.
Yes, so it wouldn't ever automatically get passed. Anybody who actually wants to do this has to bring it before the Zoning Board of Appeals, and at that point any of the neighbours can stand up and state their concerns, and the solution that gets crafted can be tailored to the concerns that people bring to the process. There's no automatic approval of this, and it also needs to go to the vote as well. So the town has to vote to have this process applied. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Anyone, if it was the Norm Vega that wants to do this, they would have to, after this passes a town vote, they would have to apply to the zoning board for special exception approval. And those and in the memo that I included in this details what the special exception process is and why it's there, and that is to mitigate impacts, undue issues on neighbors.
Yeah, I just want to make sure people understood as a kind of a 2-step process. Change the zoning ordinance alone doesn't create the...
And even the Whitehall Inn, so if they open this year and they're allowed, their grandfather status would continue. However, if they don't open this year and they want to open in the future, they would have to go back through that zoning board special exception process. So,
Can you guys keep the mic? We're getting some complaints about not being able to hear. If you can keep the microphone a little bit closer.
Yes.
Yeah, apparently you can hear us pretty well on the board because I'm talking and eat the microphone. But I think it's a bit of a problem there.
We'll turn up the sensitivity for next time.
Yeah, this is a new fangled stuff, so we're trying to make it all work right. But anyway, thanks. More importantly to that summary. Did you have a question, Allison?
No, I just wanted to say that watching 2 of those meetings, that I thought you guys did an outstanding job of navigating those comments and wading through it and taking concerns. But you know, it's hard. Even listening myself, I would find myself back and forth, and you guys did a really good job, I think, of taking the comments and then respectfully sort of coalescing them into a workable solution. I think it was nice to hear that, you know, the perspective of Ethan having been on the ZBA. There aren't many people, I think, in town that have been on the ZBA, and not many of us just watch those meetings in our spare time. So even for me, hearing him give the rundown of what that process is like, I think is something that a lot of Camden residents don't know what the ZBA does. And so by changing the zoning ordinance, we're giving voters the opportunity to change the ordinance in a way that would just give Norumbega the opportunity to apply for a special exception. So I just thought you guys did a great job navigating those comments.
I thought so too. Mark and I had the pleasure of being there. So Mark, when did you come in?
Bob and I both attended those meetings, and I have to say it was a great example of democracy at work, where the original idea didn't fit the situation as well as the neighbors would have liked, but the new solution, having them go to the ZBA, gave them specifically the ability to solve some of the problems that they foresaw, which made everybody a lot happier. It was just a great example of let's find the right way to do this and do it well, and I think that's what has been accomplished.
And it was those neighbors and those concerned citizens that made that suggestion, so you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the second element that you're talking about, you want to cover that first before we deliberate on the?
What's the second one?
Are we supposed to set a public hearing? I mean, are we weighing in now on also what we think about the?
No, we're only setting a public hearing meeting so that we can weigh in, the public and us, on forwarding it to a warrant.
Okay, I mean, I definitely think we should, because I'm very excited for the public to be able to go to Norumbega or Whitehall.
Past practice has been to do this, to give you a little heads up on
Totally agree.
what happened at the public hearing
Totally
with the
agree.
planning board, and then you guys, Janice is already trying to move forward doing the public notice that's required to do a public hearing on the 26th.
The two items here.
There's the Hotel Village District and then erosion sedimentation.
He mentioned it real quickly. No, I said he did mention.
Oh, I didn't hear. I'm sorry.
Yeah, both of them,
I was
26,
focusing
right?
on number one and listen to number
or
two.
maybe not the other
So,
one.
yeah, the action would be for the select board to approve taking this to a public hearing for these two zoning ordinance amendments on the 26th.
I'll make a motion.
I don't, go ahead and make the motion, and then
As I say, I'll make a motion that we move both ordinances forward to a public meeting on February 26th. February 26th?
It's February 26th, that's correct.
Public hearing.
Second.
A discussion.
I guess I would rather vote on them one by one, because to me, the erosion,
They will be two public hearings, separate public hearings.
but so do we always have to vote to send everything to a public hearing?
Oh, no.
Or, because
No, you
I
don't.
do think that by voting to send something to a public hearing, we're saying that we think it should
Be
move
considered.
forward. And I just have I have feelings about the first thing we just talked about, and, or if the right thing to do is just to send it to a public hearing.
No, I disagree only in one small point. Moving to take it to public hearing doesn't mean the select board could easily turn around, which we've done in the past, and said, no, we don't want this going forward to warrant because we think it needs some more work or whatever the heck. So this is not approval of that. So this is just taking it, when, we have to give notice for public hearing of 10 days or something, and allow the public to digest and come to comment on it. And that will be our time to say pros and cons, yes or no.
Just that it costs us money to send, every time we do this and we sit to the newspapers, and so if we're gonna send it out to public hearing, I think
It
I think
does.
you really, when we do that, it should be at the stage where we mostly think it's ready. And for me, the erosion thing, I think needs a little bit of work, and maybe that's something we
We
should.
could certainly have a separate vote if you would prefer to do, I don't care, that's fine.
Why don't I amend my motion to to authorize the hotel ordinance to move forward to a public hearing.
Second.
Discussion. All's in favor? 5-0. Okay, now, do you want, anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to send the erosion control to a public hearing as well on March 26th. Do we have a second?
Well, second is just to force a vote. Discussion. Alice, go ahead.
We've had so many conversations about how there are so many things that we're all looking at. I will be perfectly honest, and I have not had a chance to, in a really detailed way, look at the other erosion control ordinances that other towns have. I'm a little uncomfortable with the fact that by adopting the state language, now we're going to insert the idea that agriculture is exempt from these standards, and I know that that might be tied into the right to farm laws or whatever else, but in our ordinance right now, it doesn't say that agricultural activities are exempt from erosion control. And so adding that language in there just makes me a little concerned, because I do see, you got a horse farm with a manure pile right next to the river. I'd rather not have language in the town zoning ordinance that says, well, if it's agriculture, then you can do whatever you want. And maybe we'll have to do that in the long run, but it doesn't seem like our ordinance currently. When I go through it, there's all kinds of stuff in there that gives the town recourse when there are erosion issues. And I would just like the chance to be able to look at it harder and look at that agricultural piece a little bit more before we send it out.
You might.
Yeah, kind of a question for Jeremy. Are we up against a clock? Is there anything that we're putting ourselves in a corner on if we delay on this?
No, I don't think so, honestly. We have had some pretty significant erosion issues this summer, as you probably are aware, and we were able to deal with those appropriately under our current ordinance.
Case-by-case basis, essentially.
Yeah, I think we're fine. I would like to. What this does is this would force everyone that does any soil disturbance to install erosion control on the front end of the project. It's black and white. It says that. That said, if we see a erosion or sedimentation issue, we can deal with it currently. So I think we're okay if you want to work on this or investigate it a little more. I do. I don't think it's going to negatively impact the town's ability to address erosion ongoing issues. So for me, I just would like to have it in the ordinance that you're required to have erosion control in place and operational before you disturb soil. Mm-hmm. That said, again, we're able to deal with all of the erosion issues that we've had going on in this town in the last year effectively. So I think we can honestly, work, listen to what Allison's saying and work on it and look at what can be done for agriculture, look at what can be done for forest management activities. That's another one. So it's not going to hurt my feelings at all if we work on this one a little more. It's not. And I think we're okay in managing erosion issues in town without it for now.
Yeah. Long
term, I'd like to get it in there, the requirement to have it installed prior to soil disturbance, but in the meantime, I think we're fine. I don't have a problem working to try to come up with something.
I think the process of taking it to public hearing in 2 weeks is productive. We've taken things to public hearing before and didn't carry them beyond that point because we identified substantive issues that we wanted clarified, and it caused substantive change in the document, which we've already spent time and money developing. So to me, bringing it to public hearing doesn't nix what you're suggesting. It keeps things on a schedule that we've already started on. I would agree. I preferred. I think we've done a lot with ordinance work, developing a lot of ordinance stuff in the last months. Is this a barn burner? No, it's not. It's good to do, absolutely. But we've come this far. I think we should take it to the next step and then force us to do 2 weeks worth of homework and thinking about it and see, because we were presented with a prioritized list of ordinances, and we did not nix very much on that list, and we should have done it at that point in time if we didn't want to carry it. But we didn't think it was a top priority, but we didn't nix it, as I recall. But anyhow, that's just my feeling.
Jeremy and Allison, can you clarify for me, because if I don't get it, I'm sure a lot of people in the public don't get it. What's the difference? What are you looking for? And Jeremy, what's Allison looking for that's not addressed in the state issues? What's the difference here?
So the state specifically exempts forest management activities. It also specifically exempts agricultural activities. The state does not define agriculture, and I inquired with the DEP and the Department of Agriculture on what the definition of agriculture is for the purposes of the state erosion sedimentation control law, and neither one had a good answer. Okay. So what I tried to do was I went and I I grabbed the definition of agriculture as defined in state law, which the state didn't, but forest management activities is exempt from this, and that's because on the state level, the state DEP tries to push, certain resource issues to the agencies that deal with those issues. Like they'll send, again, forest management erosion from a timber harvesting project. They'll send that to the Bureau of Forestry and have the Forest Service deal with that, or they'll send agricultural erosion issues, or what you mentioned, the horse manure, or that's not erosion issue, but that's something that ought to be looked at because that's a pollution issue. But they send that to the Department of Agriculture, and they don't deal with it in-house.
So did you add those things to the state?
No.
So we would eliminate the ability to look at those things by
Yes.
changing our ordinance?
Yes.
And why do you think we should do that?
Well,
So you
and I
gain,
think it
there's a
requires little
gain.
more
The
thought.
gain is that we would have in their language that would require erosion control methods prior to soil disturbance. Right now, the way we would deal with like the negative impacts of erosion from soil disturbance would be through like showing that it was affecting protected natural resource. So it's, if I'm understanding correctly, like we have, if runoff from a site is disturbing a protected natural resource, our current ordinance gives us the ability to deal with that. And it gives us, so now, but it doesn't necessarily say, that we have the ability to enforce
Right.
the method of control, unless it's in the shoreline. And if you get in the shoreline zone, then we have all kinds of stuff already. So I'm just concerned that if we discover that a forest management project or an agricultural project is damaging a protected natural resource by erosion, then they are going to be able to say, oh, we're exempt. Whereas right now, I feel like we have recourse.
I think that's right.
I think
I do.
that's
So my question is, if we were to add those two protections back in, match the state resources, and add in those two things into this ordinance, we would be covered both ways?
Likely, but that's a substantial change.
We
Or
have to-
substantive change to what the public hearing was.
Right.
And it's not a problem. I mean, we can work on that, and we can do another hearing and craft some different language. That's fine.
And that's sort of what I'm saying.
But currently, we couldn't just make that change today.
I understand.
And then say, let's apply it to the hearing that's happening on the
You feel that
26th.
would make sense to do? Would that give you more protection?
Sure.
If it's legal, you have to
And
kind of
I'd
like
to do
adopting
a
the
little-
state.
I'd like to do a little digging on it. And it makes sense to me, honestly. I don't think there's a
Okay.
super rush. I think, again, we're protected.
Okay.
And we have the ability to deal with it. Again, this is talking, how this currently reads is talks about if you cause substantial or avoidable erosion.
Right.
I don't ever want to cause substantial or avoidable erosion, right? You want
Right.
to limit that from the get-go so that you don't have to send them a notice of violation saying, hey, look, see what you did? You caused this significant erosion and you deposited material into
Right.
a protected resource.
And I have one last question
ahead,
about it.
Go ahead.
When we had the erosion problem at the Snow Bowl because of the trees that were cut down, would that have been covered by the Forest Service, or would that have been covered because we're doing construction?
Yeah, that would have been development, so it
That
wouldn't have been,
that would have
it
been,
wouldn't have been
that would
forest
have been covered
management
the other way.
activities. at
Okay,
that
just
point.
wanted
It's
to
clearing
clarify
development.
where that problem was.
Jeremy, if we take this route and, go beyond the 26th, this would, procedurally, this would have to go back for changes through the planning board again in a public hearing there?
Yeah,
And then back to this position again?
not a hard thing to do. I mean, this is an easy one.
All right, all right. So we have,
I think it's reasonable to do that.
okay, so we
I'd
have,
like to withdraw my,
wait a minute. Why don't we just vote it down?
do that.
All those in favor of Mark's motion and it's been
There's a
seconded,
mechanism
please
for
raise their
discussion.
hands. All those,
Likes controversy.
all those opposed to the motion, please raise their hand, 5-0. So we'll defer that activity to a future. I just get procedural, what can I do? But anyway, that's fine, cool. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rosie, for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Congratulations on yours, the tied for, what did you win at the toboggan race? Women's
Women's four-person?
person? Great costumes, great costumes.
Did you get a trophy?
I mean, it's great.
You don't
It's
get a
really
trophy for third
sustainable, like
place?
everybody we're working with. but it really did matter a lot. And we have a lot of streams. We have, our river.
Really?
Goose River, our streams drain to Goose
have a
River.
stream that goes into Goose River?
I think so, yeah. We have two
Oh, that?
ponds and one's in the woods. That's like at the
Little farm ponds, like old
one in the
drainage
woods is
ponds?
pretty big. It's
Absolutely, absolutely.
made at the bottom.
All right,
Sure, Beth is listening.
back, yeah, call the meeting back to order, please. Everybody's attention. We're going to move on to the discussion of item number 10, which is the approval of the contract for LED streetlight conversion in the town of Camden, correct?
Yes.
Only.
Yes.
More in an evening.
Tom? Please. Thank you. I'll get you later. Okay.
Maybe we should just let everybody, like,
Let 'em go.
let him go
Bye,
for a
Tom.
minute,
Bye,
and then
Nina.
not, chat amongst ourselves for a second. And
Okay. No worries,
fine.
no worries.
Hold out there.
Thanks, Rosie.
Rosie, thank you.
All right, well, back to item number 10, which is the LED lighting for the town of Camden. Clearly, there's a proposal in here to do it. It's been done before.
Sure, and
Go
I'll
ahead,
give a
please.
little bit of background on
Please,
the project.
please.
So the Energy Committee approached me about converting all of the town streetlights to LEDs as well as municipal ownership. And this is a project that a lot of towns are doing across the state because really when you look at not the decorative fixtures that we have on Main Street, but all the other street lights across town, so those Cobra heads that kind of you see in residential neighborhoods. The major cost to the town isn't actually the energy cost of those lights, it's the tariff that CMP applies to them for the town to lease them. So it's quite a cost to the town. We're looking at about $54,000 a year in energy costs, in tariff costs. So this project would look at both converting to LED, which is, it's good because energy savings as a result of that, as well as the town taking over ownership of all those streetlights. The town of Camden has about 295 of them. So when we began this project, I said to the Energy Committee, I know of a few other communities in the Mid-Coast area that were looking at doing this project as well. So I'd like to reach out to some of them because there's an economy of scale that we could achieve by doing this project together. So I got in touch with Rockland and they were interested in being involved. Rockport, Warren, Union asked to be involved when they found out it was going on. Thomaston was interested as well. So there were 6 of us that went in together. And we got 2 proposals back. One from Real Term Energy and the other from Headstrom. And so the idea is that if all the towns can either choose to move forward and they'd get an individual contract with the vendor that they're going to go with, or they can choose not to move forward. The town of Warren, for example, they decided they don't want to do it. It's just not, they have too few lights to make it worth it for them.
Very few.
So, but everybody else wants to move forward. Real Term was significantly cheaper, so everybody was interested in working with Real Term. The good thing about that, though, is Real Term will likely contract with a local vendor like Headstrom to do the actual work.
Oh, I see.
So a lot of the
Money back into
savings,
the
yeah,
community.
yeah.
Great.
And that's actually how Headstrom originally found out about it, was through Real Term.
What is the total financial potential impact and how's it being funded?
So for the town of Camden, it would be a financing, and I would recommend that we do it over a 5-year term because the payback period is over 4.2 years. So the savings really comes from the money that we're no longer paying to CMP for tariffs as well as energy savings. So we're looking at saving about $36,000 a year. And so that would, 36,000. So, over a 5-year period, instead of paying that money to CMP, we would be paying on the financing for this project. And after 4 years, it's paid off, and then it's all savings to the town.
What's the order of magnitude of the financing?
Oh, so the total amount that we would need to finance? About
Approximately.
$160,000.
How much?
$160,000.
That's what I figured. 170, I thought. But
Yeah. So it's one of those projects, I think it's a no-brainer for the towns. We're not a pioneer. We get to be kind of like the second wave of towns that are doing this. And since we're doing it with a group in the Mid-Coast, some of the major concerns which initially came up when I was working in Rockland. It was really the maintenance and, how are we going to get, we have a hard time getting people to do traffic light maintenance, and CMP has a hard time doing street light maintenance now. So, how are the towns going to do this on their own? Now that we have a group of towns together, it's going to be more cost effective for somebody who's doing the maintenance work to service a bunch of towns at once, as opposed to if Camden was just doing it all by ourselves and we were the only ones with a contract with that company to provide maintenance services. And also, I don't feel bad saying this in a public meeting, but really CMP has done such a bad job maintaining streetlights that really there's not much worse we could do with our own contract to do it. So
That was kind.
A lot of support for that comment.
Roger, the last question financially, just so everybody knows, is does this money come out of FY19 or 20?
So FY20 would really be the first year where this would be happening. So
Forthcoming budget.
the forthcoming budget, and really it will have no impact on the budget. It would just really be moving money from one line, which is in the street light line, to our debt service line.
Mark.
I was going to say, and one thing not to forget is one of the reasons CMP was so bad at doing streetlights is because they were not changing LEDs. LEDs will be viable for a long time, and they will be cheaper. We're concentrating on the Lonomar, but after 4 years, we make money on this deal, and we have better lights. They also, I believe the company will also look at where lights need to be, where lights may not need to be, and will also change them to more dark skies limits, so we will have less light pollution. So it's a win-win all the way around.
Taylor.
Yeah, I echo Mark's sentiment. I think the Energy Committee did a great job when we heard about this in the fall, and really did their homework, and it clearly is a no-brainer. So it's an exciting project for us to jump on.
Allison.
I just want to thank Audra for all the additional work of going around to all the towns is something that I was excited about. It really pushed the project over the edge for me, and that's the part that really takes work that stops a lot of towns and town managers from following through with these things, because it's like every person that you have to communicate with. I understand that that's added time, and
Well, everyone was so enthusiastic. I got them all to meet last week, and
even just that is is something. And so I had almost forgotten that you were working on this in the background, and just to see it, not have to have us say, well, what's happening with the streetlights? We talked about that. And just all of a sudden, to have it like, oh, she figured it out. And so thank you very much.
Yes.
So your recommendation to the select board is to hire?
we sign a contract with Real Term to do the conversion, and it'll most likely start over the summer.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the contract with Real Term for changeover to LED fixtures and street lights.
Second.
Don't be so anxious.
We're
Okay, any more discussion on the matter? All those in favor? 5-0. Cool. Very good. Good job, Audra. Next is the discussion of the approval of a bid for the redevelopment of Mechanic Street and Washington Street parking lots. I knew that was going to have that effect. Apparently, I don't know.
Maybe Audra should go first.
No, I'm just trying. I'm
love
trying
to.
to give her a chance to think. No, honestly,
she's quick on her
we
feet.
should talk a little bit about what the concept of this project is, because the public doesn't have this in front of them at the moment, and I think we should talk about.
Maybe I should put it up on the.
If we had time, we could.
You just start talking, and I'll work in the background.
Okay.
For the
Thanks, Allison.
history of this project, since none of us, with the exception of maybe Mark, were around at the time, I'd like to invite Rick Seibel up, because this has been a project that Rick has been advocating for quite some time.
Okay, good idea.
I don't know if I have this stuff.
That's all right. If you can't, you can. It's okay.
Can you hear me?
Just stay close to the mic if you can. That might help. These are.
Needs to be longer.
Yeah, it's supposed to be within a few inches of your mouth, frankly, but I don't know. We're still getting used to it, so go ahead, Rick.
The parking lots out here, I've been trying to do something with them since, I think, 1996, anyway, somewhere in that vicinity. There's just been a big mess for a long time, and I'd like to get this project on the way and get it completed. And I think we had $203,000 bond.
210.
210, okay. So that's the total to do both lots was about $258,329. By cutting, we have 5 street lights that are scheduled to be put in there. The street lights are just like the rest of the ones downtown, the full cutoff LED lights. And if we took a couple of them out, we could have enough money to do the whole project. And also the paving, I can do out of my paving money that I have for
the lot.
For the lot.
Both
and everything.
lots.
Yes. But I think between Audra and myself, we can make it work with money we have on hand and everything. But I just think it would be more beneficial to do both of them at the same time, rather than try to do the other one another year. You have to rebid it. It's probably going to cost more. If you come back in to try to do the second phase 2, I guess you could say, that's what we have it down here as.
I was going to ask some questions. Anybody got any questions on what's being quoted on here? Do we have it clear? I do want to have Rick, maybe you could describe a little bit about what this project really is physically. And we're changing the Mechanic Street parking lot. It's access to the upper lot here is a little bit, improved. The wall that's falling apart like crazy down there is going to be replaced. We're losing some parking spaces. I don't know how many exactly, but that's part of it. Because there's only, as I see the plan, there's only one entrance for a vehicle. We don't have the loop we have currently in the Mechanic Street parking lot. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, on the Mechanic Street side of the parking lot, phase 1, which we're calling phase 1, they're moving, just having that as one entrance to make it a better parking lot rather than a drive-through parking lot. So most of the people use it to turn around. You can stand down there any time of the day and watch people use it to reverse themselves around in the parking lot, and there's people walking around in there. It's just not a safe way to have it set up. The design, as you can see from the design, there's more green space in there. There's a better ADA compliant parking space that's van accessible, and there's a few more trees added in that parking lot. The wall will be, that's there now, which is a rubble wall, keeps falling down in spots, rocks keep falling out of it. It's a really difficult place to try to keep clean. It's always a mess in there. This wall, when you replace the wall, it will be like a segmented block wall. It's probably going to be, I think on the plan, that figure when I was looking at there, it's roughly 4 feet high. There'll be a stair access to the upper lot from there, from the corner against the old Five and Dime building to take you up to the next level. Because a lot of people go up and down the wall. I do myself. There's a couple spots there where you can.
Yeah, it's very difficult and not safe to
It's
climb
not
up
safe
and
to
down,
do.
which,
Right.
done a number of times. Having a stairway would be a big advantage.
Yeah.
Allison?
I guess my reservation about it is that when I was on the budget committee and this came to us, it was very much like a utilitarian, okay, we need to fix the wall, we need to do some paving, but it wasn't, like, this to me is a redesign. It's eliminating parking spaces, when what I hear from Camden residents all the time, and especially now in this area, is that they want more parking. And so to spend additional money to do a design upgrade that eliminates parking spaces, and then also, I don't totally know what I think about the eliminating one of the entrances. I can see why there would be benefits to that, but I also think there could be unintended consequences of, right now people can turn around in there and go back up Mechanic Street rather than going through that Main Street traffic jam. It just kind of seemed like a big change to me, and it didn't go through the process of, so many of the things that happen in town go through a public hearing process and the planning board, and I know that maybe legally we don't have to do that, but it just seemed to me like, whoa, these are a lot of changes, that there's not going to be shade now on the side of the parking lot that's near the road that goes up behind, what is it, that blue building? You know, the trees that are growing into the wall are going to be, they do provide shade. That's not the biggest part of my concern. I just kind of feel like there's been a little bit of design creep that is eliminating parking spaces and maybe, causing some traffic problems. And
Mark?
I just, first question, how many spaces do we lose? Is it 3?
Down in the lower lot, I think we're just losing 1.
Right,
But
and up
I'm not
above?
sure, because they're putting parking
No, I
on
don't
the
believe
Mechanic
that.
Street where the other entrance is. There'll be 3 more added out there.
Yeah, so we actually, we don't lose that much.
Upper lot, I'm not sure.
Well,
I just came from the design team meeting, and they've been a champion in this and been working on this for quite a few years now, and along with Rick, and they wanted me to emphasize some of the reasons are going forward. Number one, the parking lots are safer, better access, especially the Washington Street. The design changes there really assist that street because there's more light there. The lot that's there right now is very awkward and very difficult to park in. It's crowded, and what it also does is gives Washington Street a more public presence. And with the addition of Long Grain there now, one of the things they're talking about, it's when you leave here tonight, it's a very dark street. Very, very small access. It really opens up Washington Street for the new presence of this, the new law office, and really helps that parking lot stay viable. Also, one of the things that will be covered, there'll be mechanical or engineering put in so that we can expand 2 of those spaces, I believe, for charging electric vehicles at some point in the future. But the design team is very, very much in favor of this and wanted me to emphasize that they're more than 100% in favor, and they've been working on this and looking at all the designs for quite a few years.
A couple of questions I have. One is, what is being done on Washington Street? There's no drawing that I have.
Yeah, it's the upper lot.
Where? Oh, that's what they're calling. Oh, I'm thinking Washington Street down there. I said, what the heck is that? Sorry, ignorance. Okay, but the second part of the question was there were 3 private parking spaces accessed from the roadway from a mechanic, and they say private. Who owns those spaces?
There are some private spots there, yes,
Yeah,
and
but
they will be accessed.
Yeah, but whose private spaces are those? They're not public.
I don't know whose they are.
There's some building owners.
Yeah.
So we're improving their access for parking.
They have one, I think there's a part of that, there may be a little section of that there that is actually not town property, it's part of the building property.
Would make sense.
Yeah.
Would make sense.
It would make sense to do that. I mean, improving that piece of property there, the parking there, there's spots here where there's weeds and Japanese knotweed growing and everything else.
You want to talk
where's the
about?
dumpster going to go?
On Washington Street?
In the top of the
It
wall?
would probably be in the same spot. Or
Okay.
it would be moved over. Does it show it there?
I don't know. I
have a
can't tell
plan
how many
for-
parking spaces this is eliminating.
On Washington?
I mean, I need to look at.
Well, on Washington Street,
like walk
along
out
the Washington Street section here is 5 spaces that would be moved, that wouldn't be there.
On
Five?
the front. The
Yes,
ones
on
in
the
front. Nice shot. Rick.
I thought I was going to do that at first.
You win the reward.
There's 5 there. I don't know, I think there's 8 or 9 across the top, and I don't know what's on the plan.
Well, the ones that are on top now, some of those are also private, so you're not really losing those. There's about 3 or 4 that are private on the top.
There's 2 on the right-hand side. I think that's a private, and then one other.
Now it's crowded, but I kind of prefer crowded and difficult to maneuver through to no ability to park at all.
Except that the town just did purchase, some substantial additional parking. This makes it safer. Do you want to talk about the advantage of doing these both together? Because you brought that up in the meeting this afternoon.
Yeah, yes, I think doing them both together is going to be
Yeah,
a
that
cost
makes
savings.
lots of sense.
Lots of sense. What was this what raised this parking lot thing to high level of, was it the comp plan that called out for this or something that drove this?
Over the years that I've been involved with it, there's been different business people around town that thought it looked like we basically called it a ghetto spot there. It was, a place that scares people away.
Sure.
You come around, it looks like this is a part of town you don't want to be in.
I'd say the biggest part is the retaining wall.
Oh, of
so
course. Oh,
there's
totally.
rocks.
Makes total sense
Right.
to me.
The retaining wall and then the paving. And then
Yes.
when they were looking at all of that, it
Yes.
just kind of, they started, okay, well, it's going to cost a lot of money to fix the retaining wall and repave everything. So while we're doing that, why don't we look at how it's configured and is there a better way of doing it? And that's what led us to where we are now. But also, this was approved through a budget process and the money has already been bonded for it. So.
Right, and it's that budget process that just made me
Right.
feel like,
And this is the thing, I think that Mark would have been the only one who was here.
Right.
During that.
no, I was here.
You were on
I
the
was on
budget committee.
I was on the budget committee, and
Yeah.
we talked, and then town meeting, and then,
Right,
Question, who did the engineering for this?
the endorsement.
it would just, for me, if there were more of a public
names on it.
process.
I
Maybe
read it this afternoon.
the public will say,
this afternoon.
great, you
I-
know? I just feel like, I don't know.
I do, have the downtown business owners been involved in the design and development of this project at all?
There's one that's on the team,
There is?
yes. Meg
Okay, but was,
Bujano.
okay.
Yeah, the smiling cow.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I share, being both a downtown resident, but mostly concerned about the businesses. I do share a concern with eliminating parking spaces, even though I know we have some on the other side of the mill. It's a little bit more of a walk, but, I mean, there are certainly times in the heat of busy downtown Camden where both of these lots are full and the public safety lot is full on the other side of the public safety building. Obviously, it's unsightly, and I see the need for doing this. I just would be a little concerned about eliminating parking spaces unless I was sure that the business owners that are going to be directly affected by that downtown were very well aware of this plan.
I would also offer that the spaces that we're eliminating, the only way that people are able to get in and out of them, or at least to get out of them, is by driving over a sidewalk straight out onto the street.
It's not really a sidewalk, is it?
Not really.
Talking about next to
Well,
Camden House
yeah,
of Pizza?
it's
Right.
direct to people. There's a sidewalk.
I
there,
always
but
think
it's
about
not
that when
curbed
I,
or
like what I'm.
anything.
I do too.
I'm driving.
I mean, that's what makes sense to me, is to drive over it, but I make sure there are no people coming. I mean,
It's I'm not opposed to what this plan is presenting. I think Allison is making me think that I want to make sure that there was an appropriate amount of public input specifically for businesses if we're eliminating parking
I'd say
spaces.
if you don't approve doing this project now, we reconsider doing it completely because they're not going to hold their prices forever. And the only reason we got such good prices was because of the timing for when we bid it out. So I think if you want to hold off on the project, we're going to have to reconsider everything about it.
I mean, even just like 2 weeks.
I'd say that
I mean,
They would hold their prices.
if I may, I also share the concerns of Taylor and Allison, and I think that the second entrance actually is useful, and I've never, and I hate to disagree with Rick, I defer to Rick on this, but I've never seen it as something unsafe. I think it's kind of a convenient thing. I actually think it is safe with a congested parking lot. I drive a lot of different weird cars, and I don't have problems there. I never feel like I feel like it's actually like allows people to have a little bit more of a flow. I feel like it could really turn into kind of really cars kind of ganged up on each other and just people not knowing how to get out of there and just trapped.
Do we have a drop dead date for the bid?
okay, so say we send this out to public comment again, and there's a lot of feedback,
again,
and we have
for
to
the first time.
completely change the design.
Then you're gonna have to rebid it.
Yeah, we're going to have to rebid it, we're going to have to refund it, we might need to budget for it out of this year's budget.
Take
to
another
do.
year.
Oh, yeah.
No, well, you could always
I'd
approach
say
it.
easily another year.
To redesign it and stuff like that?
Just because of timing for when you get the best, the only reason that we got good prices on this is because we bid it out in the winter to start in the spring.
They'd want to have this done before Memorial Day because
sure.
it's going to
Oh,
be
sure.
way too busy down there. after
Right,
that.
so, and we're looking at next Memorial Day, if we are going to wait and if we need to redesign and rebid.
These bids are lump sum bids, correct?
Yes.
Correct? Lump sum bids for both, well, Washington Street and there's two.
Phase 1, Phase 2 is how we have it set up.
And there's a couple of allowances you threw in for trees and a couple of things. They've also bid unit prices for aggregate and the like. Unit prices they've bid here for aggregate.
That was for different levels of aggregate in the base.
Adding 6
Yeah,
inches.
added yes, going with a deeper base, which is what we would do. They just wanted to know what the difference would be.
Okay, Rick, let me ask a question, and Audra, I want you to answer as well. Do you feel this is the best solution for these lots right now after, you've been working on this since 1996?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do you feel about?
Well, I haven't been working on it. It's been in
but
my
it's something-
plan to try to do something.
Advocating.
All he's wanted.
But do you feel this is the best solution for what you see up there?
For what I see up there, they've gone through a lot of, the design team looked at a lot of different scenarios, and this is the one they like the best.
Okay.
And I think
Audra, same question?
I really don't think we want to keep revisiting this project. I think that it's something that it just needs to get done. I think in everything we do, we could probably have more public input, but I think that we did have the design team, I think, worked with business owners as well. I think it wasn't done in a vacuum. So
Now, wait a minute, Mark. The bids as we have them now for the full scope, and they're all above budget by some amount right now, right? The other alternative is to accept your preferred bidder and have them work with us on a
Value engineering.
Well, we could do that, but Rick is very underspent in this year's paving line.
I
So we've got
understand.
plenty of funds there, and
It's just
we
a couple.
can, like we said, we can cut out the lights.
I know some places that
There's a
need
lot of
repave.
stuff we can do.
That's all I'm saying. All we should do is, one alternative would be, we could design this to, I agree, to be
Right.
turnable. I'm not a big
No,
fan.
I would advocate
do
cutting
not
out the
like this
lights.
design.
That'll cut
Well,
down.
there's a couple other places I would
Yeah.
work with a contractor to say, what if we don't do this? And they're not big, by the way, we're not eliminating
Right.
parking spaces or curbs or trees, but I think there are some spaces in there we could probably tweak out some.
Yeah, Rick's done some tweaking already, and I think
I'm
we've
sure he
gotten
has.
down to.
I'm sure he has.
Yeah.
It's,
So this isn't the final, what we're looking at isn't, there's been tweaking since then?
well,
or
I suspect his tweaks are non-visible tweaks.
it was
It
the
would
lighting.
change.
Visible sort to
If you
tweak.
took 3 lights out and just put the base in,
Understand.
the foundation to come in, you can do them later.
I think there is an act, 1 second, Mark, I just want to close a point before I forget, because I'm getting old. I think there are a number of elements in this design that are nice to haves, but could be eliminated to bring the cost back into.
Right, and I guess one thing, and
We could
I'm
probably
sorry,
work on that,
Rick,
but-
to bring this
eliminating
up, but, okay, so say everybody feels like we really can't get rid of the parking spaces fronting on Washington Street. We could cut some money by not curbing that.
Oh, good.
I mean,
But who, and at what point is that going to happen?
After
Where
you,
we would-
you have to sit down with the contractor and value engineer it.
But who would do that, and how would we decide?
I got a good guy right here that can help.
yeah.
And I can provide comments myself, to you to consider, to bring this thing within the budget we have. I think that's reasonable anyway, because honestly, there's some nice to haves in here, and it's well done design. I'm not criticizing it, but, well, actually I am. But I think there's some places we could just, keep moving forward by tweaking it without having to, because if you go in, I agree, if you're going to go into changing, which I would have preferred to see in a flow-through parking lot, you're talking next year.
How far over budget was it?
Mark, it's your turn.
50,000, or sorry, 40,000.
40,000. Mark, go ahead, sorry.
In the meeting, the design meetings, Rick already mentioned the things you could do to bring it within the budget. And the one point I wanted to make is I've been sitting in the meetings, design team meetings for 3 years, watching them work through this process, and work through the engineering, work through the different designs. And I get nervous sometimes when, we second guess stuff where they've been spending years looking at something, and we have Rick's opinion, Audra's looked at it closely, and the design team has worked extensively with the, engineering to look at it. It's, if we stall now, it costs us money, and I don't think we're going to find a better solution from what I've seen through my experience here.
Yeah, that's
I would say
fine.
I'm not second guessing it, I'm just
agree.
paying close attention.
If there were a narrative that explained, this is how we made this decision,
Or a
or
member of the
there's a
Design
very good
team was
chance you
here.
could be convinced.
A presenter.
It's just not what was presented to the budget committee when it was
There's also
approved
should
by
be
voters.
there also should be a strong message to, this is not specifically to this, to general terms of everything. The town is different today because we have a lot stronger staff. We already had strong PW, but other stronger staff that does stuff. But if anybody wants to sell something to a board, it's probably smart not to bring a fait accompli to the table. That perhaps it would be wiser to bring a preliminary idea and direction, as we just did with ordinances, to say this is where we're heading down this trail. Because this is going to happen. This is definitely going to happen if you bring fait accompli to the board that hasn't had any input, if it desires to have input. It's just a word of caution. I know our committees work very hard, and then they come up with some great ideas, but these things are going to get comment. But I think the smart play here is to, I agree, I would want to delay this thing for a year. I know you recommend, we'll ask in a second who your recommended contractor is, but there needs to be some value engineering done on it, and I think it needs to be quite a bit. What that is, Rick, you're smart enough to figure out some of the nice to haves versus have to haves. And I think that's the key word, nice to haves versus have to haves.
And maybe a look at the second entrance.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear about my concerns, I think that the project is needed, and it looks wonderful, and they've clearly put a lot of effort into it. But parking is a serious concern for downtown. So I don't think that it's unwise to be questioning whether, whether the cost benefit of removing parking spaces is worth the, upgrading.
How do you want to work at the value engineering? You want to provide a list of stuff to the contractor, or just sit down and work with the contractor?
Yeah, I think that once you approve us to move forward with a contractor, we can kind of sit down and we've got a list of things already. We can kind of sit down and work out exactly what it is we're going to go back to them with and have them, give us an updated cost.
Yeah, I hate doing takeouts. I like doing ads and construction because takeouts.
Yeah, I guess I would be, I've looking at lights, taking out lights, shrubs and trees, and you don't
We're
really
going to change the retaining walls.
Oh, conduit.
Retaining wall surface we can change.
Conduit you don't need to have now. You can do it later when you decide where to put the stuff.
Conduit's pretty cheap.
It is very cheap.
But if you tear the road up, it's going to cost you a lot more to put in later.
You're right.
So
You're right.
putting in conduit,
You're right.
I
It's
think
cheap.
would not be.
That's true. It's only probably an inch and a half conduit or something.
Yeah,
There's
But you're talking about, I'm just not clear on, you're talking about the Washington Street parking lot. Do you want to take out the island part there and say parking spaces? To me, it's having cars, and this is the way the design team feels also, driving out over a sidewalk is not a good idea.
I think you've gone too far.
On Washington here.
Yes.
I think you've gone too far to make that kind of attack
There's a
on this
sidewalk on
design.
the other side of the road, though.
Pardon?
Just talking about right here.
Yeah.
I just never thought of that really as a sidewalk, but, there's
Well,
a
it's-
side, the
it's-
sidewalk is on the other side.
The sidewalk comes up on both sides, and
Yeah.
it kind of dissipates.
Well,
right there
you
at
kind of
the
can't
parking
walk
lot.
on. Remember, there's some guy wires sticking out
Recessed
there.
sidewalk or a curb?
There's a guy wire out there. You can't walk around the guy wire very easily. You're going to hang yourself. But anyway, I think
If we approve the bid, you guys can look at value engineering.
Are we approving, are you suggesting we approve a contractor or approve the number?
a contractor with a need to do value engineering to bring the price down to something, to eliminate whatever's appropriate in value engineering to bring the cost down to within budget.
To within budget, you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
If it could, yeah.
If you can. I mean, maybe we can't, but, you know, we should try.
And it would come back to us, or?
And that's a question.
Well, like I said, he's given us the price. He broke out the price for the street lights, which was $5,800 a piece, and
A piece?
yes,
That's included in this number?
that's the LED street lights that are just like downtown.
Yeah, right, but they're included in the bids right now?
They're included in the bid, but they broke out the price of that for
Right.
me, which was $5,800 a piece.
For a piece, 3?
No, 5,
5?
yes. But I
Okay.
said if we took 3 out, then
Oh.
that
we
would
have
bring us
now?
within budget.
How many are there
We don't
now?
have 5 now.
There's 1 down there.
1 now.
Oh.
With the island, if you look at
Must
that
be
on
like-
Washington Street, there's that little island, there's 2 street lights in that, which would light this up.
Where's the
So
island
you-
in the Washington Street parking lot?
It's not, it's
Strip?
what's in the design. right there.
Oh,
Yeah.
the new island.
you-
There isn't room for an island over there.
You're talking about
Parking spaces
18,000
would be
reduced
eliminated.
amount for just those 3 lights.
Well, yeah, I mean, you wouldn't have room for them if you put that there. And,
Right.
Yeah, yeah, and the sidewalk.
When we redo that sidewalk right there, you redo the sidewalk, it'd be curved up through there, just like the rest of the sidewalk on that
On
side of the
Washington
street.
Street.
Yes.
I feel like I'm satisfied. I mean, I don't want to, just my feeling, I don't want to get too into the weeds on the details of this. I trust that the design team did lots of work. I think I've expressed my concerns, but if we're hearing from Rick and from Mark, who's attended the meetings, that they've considered that, then that's okay with me.
They specifically asked me to represent them very strongly in this meeting. It's one of the reasons I've been so, because they said, we've been working this a long time, and please make sure that I express their wishes strongly. So that's one of the reasons I'm so strong on it, because I know how long they've been working on it and how strongly they feel about this design.
Okay.
It's a lot more money than voters approved, so we should keep that in mind.
No, I think it has to be brought down into budget.
And they discussed that. So, and that's what, like taking out the lights and making.
Taking out the lights and changing the surface of the wall.
Yeah.
I think all we need to do, Audra, is, what I'm suggesting was pick the contractor with the target to work with that contractor
Yep.
to bring it within budget, and then a confirmation that we have brought within budget.
Yep, we can do that.
Who is your recommended contractor?
Oh, Rick.
Nitram.
Is it Nitram?
Yeah,
Who was Martin Backwards, right?
yes.
Would the design be destroyed if we kept a second entrance? Is that anything that can be revisited? Or,
Yeah, is
I
there
feel
any-
like we might have a bunch of people really ticked off because we didn't, the last time when we made Central Street one way, and I don't know how that's going now, but I ended up feeling like I made a mistake and that we should have done a traffic study and that there are all these unintended consequences. And I feel like people might come to us this time and say, you messed up something, we gave you money to fix a wall that was falling apart and deal with some paving issues, and instead you tried to fix a problem that we hadn't identified, and we don't like it. So
We discussed that in the meeting too. And they've discussed, all those issues. And one of the things that we brought up is no matter what plan you bring forward, somebody is going to not be happy about it. And it's going to happen. And they're aware of that. They know that. That's the difficulty in doing any kind of things. And I have to say, I know you've mentioned the Central City stuff, from the people I've talked to, they're very happy with the change in direction there, and it's worked very well for the neighborhood.
Like I couldn't show my face in
Don't
town for
live
the
on
first 2
Central.
weeks.
I think that was actually a good solution where we dealt with the problem that needed to be dealt with, and it worked really well for that neighborhood.
mixed reviews from what I received, but
I'm trying to find Mark and Nitram.
if there's anybody from the public that wants to weigh in and help us,
Yeah, I want to ask a question.
but I'm not sure.
Since we don't have, in the audience, we don't have any idea of what this is going to look like.
Right,
Where is the
exactly.
single entrance going to be?
On Mechanic.
Coming
on
from the Bagel Cafe
Across from
side.
Bagel Cafe.
On the Bagel Cafe side?
Same
Okay.
location generally.
So
at
then,
now.
so then do you pick up an extra street parking place beyond the pizza place on the street? So you pick up some spots right there on the street?
Yes.
But we're losing overall.
2 spaces you gained on the street there.
Oh, what?
Two.
Oh, and is it, but is it
Okay,
still a
go
net
ahead.
loss?
So there's Bagel Cafe.
Should be.
Yes.
Two spaces there.
Okay, right there, yeah.
Right there.
Because the crosswalks there, yeah.
So those people that park now angled in front of Planet or Sherman's,
That's on the other side.
they're going to back up and hit.
No, because they don't back up and hit the people that are parked in front
Oh,
of the
right, yeah,
pizza.
yeah.
Rick, the unit price in here for retaining wall, that's for removing the retaining wall from their scope? Is that what that unit price is for?
Removing,
The retaining wall? There's a unit price for aggregates, curbing, and retaining wall, full cost per plan, at $30-something thousand. Is that for some reason you were curious would it be if you didn't do the wall?
no, I think that was the price of that, for changing the surface of it was 3,800.
Oh.
Just a different
Oh,
block.
okay.
They have different,
Then to the Nitram quote, what is the total that Nitram's quoting for Phase 1 and Phase 2 parking lots and anything else to get this plan covered?
The total bid cost for both parking lots, Phase 1 and Phase 2, is $258,329.
That's not what I read. I see 189.9, and I see 84,500.
Their Nitram's Mechanic Street lot bid was $171,880.32, and for Washington Street, it's $86,448.68.
I'm sorry. Oh, it's a blue pencil. I was looking at the wrong one. 172 for Mechanic Street, 86 and change for Washington Street. Is that correct?
Right.
And that's the total.
That's the total for the two of them.
So it's
But that's without that comes to a total of 258,000 and change. So that's why if we do the paving and do take out 3 street lights, we'll
Well, the
say
258 is total. What's the budget again?
210.
So you're about $48,000, something like that. It seems to me that's doable.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's doable.
Yeah, I think we can do it.
I think, I think we could take a look at it for, I'll call it value engineering, but I think to come back and just to confirm that the price was brought to within budget.
Yeah, we can do that.
You want a motion?
I would love one.
Okay, how do I motion that? I make a motion that we approve the contract, which
Nitric.
And how do you want to term?
With the given quote, but with the charge to bring that quote by value engineering down to the budget price.
Did you get that, Beth? Use the given quote and design changes to bring it into the proposed budget.
Of the budget of 210.
210. Approximately a $48,000, approximately $48,000 reduction. You've got 18 of it with the lights alone.
Yeah, 17,400.
Whoops, that was off.
The 3 lights. And then the paving, the paving alone, each one is one's 18,860.
Yep.
The other one's 18,910.
Yeah. I think it's doable.
Yeah.
Just sharpen the pencil. Second? Could I have a second? Oh, here we go again. I'll second it to force of, okay, all right, seconded by Jenna. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? 3-2 passes. Thank you
don't like
very
that
much, Rick.
entrance thing.
Tricky one.
That's it. That's, to me, a really bad idea.
Next, we have item number.
First time I've ever voted against Rick, but at least it's still.
It's healthy discussion. We have a discussion on the Harbor Committee that we wanted to hold. I suppose I should lead into this one since I'm liaison. We lost Mark. Where'd he go?
Bathroom.
Taking a
I thought he was going to help him pave the parking lot.
break.
We'll take a 1-minute break.
Be mad at us.
So a little up.
I just can't, having 2 entrances
I was just
to that
going
lot,
to
I
give
feel
a
like
little
it's
update on the feedback that we're getting on the live stream. Very mixed. Seems like we've had maybe the cable at home contingency is saying they can't hear, and the feedback I'm getting from the people watching YouTube is saying, like Jody and Marcy are saying, it sounds fantastic. And
That's weird.
well, I don't know if it has to do with
It might have to do with the signal over the
or just the
cable.
speakers on their device.
Oh, yeah.
So I think we should get more feedback from more people that are.
I agree.
I couldn't hear when I tried to listen to our audit workshop earlier.
It was very faint.
It was very, very faint.
It
We
really
did adjust
was,
the
yeah.
sensitivity just a little bit, but
And that was on YouTube, wasn't it?
yes, but with an older MacBook, so maybe it's my speakers clogged with like Play-Doh or something too. I don't know.
Right.
So.
Back on discussions regarding the Harbor Committee. Just as a backdrop, the town has continued to look hard at all of the hard work of a lot of people on committees and very grateful for the same. But at the same time, we started this year, as you probably know or heard, we've had a lot of discussion about work plans, and all the committees have moved ahead on work plans and tried to execute same. But in parallel, over the months, maybe the last 6 months or so, there were a number of comments that came back from town staff and others about the Harbor Committee and its cross-section. Not any individual, not any issue about any of that. It was really about the overall thrust, and some of it was discussion of every person on the committee has, to some degree, a vested interest in what goes on in the harbor. I think three of the Harbor Committee members currently have businesses that center on the harbor. Nothing wrong with that, just making comment. So after a lot of discussion with Audra, myself, and some of the town staff, we had talked about, it would be ideal, and that's key word is ideal, to reconstitute the Harbor Committee if possible. What does that mean? That means basically that we would take the current Harbor Committee membership and cancel all memberships. There's 5 members and 2 alternates. And the next day, request interested parties in becoming part of the Harbor Committee. This could result in, some modifications of including more individuals who have a different cross-section of what we currently have, and maybe not, because it's very difficult to get qualified people to commit to spending time on committees these days. It's just not that easy thing to do. And some of the committee people have worked very hard for many years on keeping our harbor the great place that it is. But we felt that would probably be the best approach, or at least to try it and see what happens. Any person, including current members, can reapply for the Harbor Committee. As I said, we may not change one member. We may change 1 or 2. We don't know. But we thought it would be the most prudent thing to do, given the cross-section and given where the town is right now with committees, work groups, and that kind of thing. I met with the Harbor Committee this last Thursday, and explained this to them and understood the only comments that were made were a couple. One was, the ordinance does require or suggest that the Harbor Committee members have some interest, knowledge, and users of the harbor. Well, we're all users of the harbor, frankly, in one way, shape, or form. Secondly, there was comments from some that said, be careful because we don't want to upset the apple cart. Well, I don't think we have much choice. I think it's a good thing to try. We need to reinforce the committees. The town, I made a comment earlier about the town changing its cross-section. We have a lot more capability in the town, a lot more management going on in a little bit of a different way. This is not criticizing any former managers or directors in the town, but it is a little different. And I think this would be a help to better align the Harbor Committee, if it's possible, with the town and its objectives and goals. And that's really what we're talking about. So the action, if any, would be to reconstitute the Harbor Committee, the 5 and 2, and see where it goes over the next couple of weeks, and have it, running by the March time period for the Harbor Committee.
I think Mark is raising.
Mark, please.
I was just going to say, I attended some of the subcommittee meetings this summer dealing with some of the licenses for the day sailors and stuff, and there were some good suggestions put forth in some of the subcommittee meetings. And then when we discussed this recently, I asked, well, what happened with some of those suggestions? And they were never brought up. They never brought forward. And that's a concern that the work that people are doing in discussions is not coming forward. And I think that's one of the things seem to not move forward. And it's important for a town to progress. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the reasons when we discussed it, I thought it might be a good idea to see if we can.
Yeah, I think one of the objectives, which I think is a great one of the Harbor Committee, is to have representation of people who have businesses in the harbor. It's very difficult, and I think the time period you were involved and I was, and we realized that getting good representation from any sector through an individual is almost impossible. Because and again, it's not a criticism of any person. I want to keep emphasizing that this is not a criticism of any person, especially key characters like Richard here, who's been chair and killed himself over the months, literally, to try to herd us cats, myself included, to get to a finish line. But I would agree. I think there's been a lot of that that's going on. There's just been a little, I think it needs to refocus. I think it's a good time to rework the work plan of the Harbor Committee more. Again, it's an excuse to do it with perhaps a new cross-section of Harbor Committee members. Allison?
Yeah, I mean, I think it, usually the people that want to get involved in certain committees are the ones that have, you know, the greatest interest in that area. It's just, you know, what happens with anything. It seems like the Harbor Committee has, and I might be wrong about this, but it's had sort of some of the lowest turnover possibly of our committees. Like a lot of them have vacancies a lot of the time. Whereas it seems like the Harbor Committee has been a fairly sought after committee in the sense that there aren't like major vacancies all the time, and I might be wrong about that. But when I've talked to people around town a little bit, it does seem like there's a feeling like you couldn't get on the Harbor Committee, or that maybe you had to be one of the people that, you know, owned a business right there, and I think it would be interesting just to, you know, to put it out there to the public and see what kind of response we get. Are there lots of people that are, you know, feeling like they would want to get involved with that? I think it's always going to be really important to have feedback from people that are directly you know, their businesses are directly impacted, or their mooring or their, you know, float is directly impacted. But usually the model seems to be that those people provide feedback, but aren't the ones actually setting the policy. And so it seems like ideally it would be better if a less interested or less
Vested.
you know, I don't want to say that word, sometimes sounds a little bit negative, but, you know, fewer people with their livelihoods attached to it were the ones making the decisions, but instead just providing the knowledge.
Are you finished?
I mean, I support giving it a try.
Okay. Richard, did you want to comment to it at all? If you're really welcome to, it's up to you. But we've talked a lot about it, and I okay, good. Okay, good.
May I bring
you may,
one
please.
quick? I completely understand sort of the idea of conflicts of interest, of stagnation, of all of that. I will say that it definitely rubs me a little bit the wrong way, the idea of just vacating the Harbor Committee and these people and these volunteers who have come in at 7 in the morning for meetings. And I wonder if there's a better mechanism to accomplish what we're trying to do than. But I don't think there is. As I've sat here sort of mulling this and reading the packet, it's challenging because I think that, you know, these are all folks that I grew up with and that I know have the best interest of the harbor at heart, but I also do see, you know, some conflicts of interest in some situation that could arise. With
Thanks, John. Mark, you want to comment?
The one comment I wanted to make is I don't have a boat. I don't know, it's not an area where I know the personalities at all of the people who on the Harbor Committee, but I'm surprised that we're not getting more reports and action from the committee to the Select Board.
Okay.
And that's a concern, that things are not coming out of the committee and coming to us.
Jen, I definitely share your angst, because I got to tell you, I wrestled with this one with Audra 2 months ago, because believe me, to a person, they're nothing but dedicated individuals, and it's just that, you know, this is the only, I came to the conclusion, this is the only fair way. You know, as I said to one of the committee members, I can't pick on you and say you shouldn't be on the committee because I don't like the color of your hat. So it would seem clean to say, let's reconstitute, which is just a flip of the switch, really, and then see where it goes in the days afterwards with the people who apply. I agree with what Allison said. I have had one person at least talk to me about love to be on the committee, probably a good cross-section person for it, maybe. Again, the people who will be reappointed to the committee are a decision of the Select Board. That'll have to be an action downstream.
Does the number of 5 with 2 alternates seem to work well logistically, or do you think that does that underserve the committee?
You know, the harbor is such a huge thing. I mean, as I've told Richard and the gang so many times, it's the only thing in our town that makes a lot of money each year. Just for the record, the harbor probably makes in the order of $250,000 to $300,000 for this town every year. It's a very lucrative entity for us, so therefore it's very important. And to that end, I think 5 and 2 is a little light. Honestly, I think that you could look at the possibility of a 7 kind of a committee thing with one alternate perhaps or something like that. But the ordinance I believe currently states 5 and 2, so that would have to be an ordinance change downstream. So I'm trying not to do too much at once, but it's a good question.
It'd be great to get those meetings now that we have a better system live streamed, and that's been a comment that's been made to me over the years that 7 o'clock meeting time too is very difficult for the public to attend, and then is it 7:30? Oh, okay.
The summer meetings have been happening at the yacht club traditionally.
That was correct. I mean, part of the reason for that it
isn't even open to the public most of the time. So
that's correct. But I think but it should be they should be live streamed. They should be here. Yes. I think remember we try to accommodate the many day sailors and windjammers who have very, very busy days during the summer in particular, and that's when the 733 came about. That's a secondary issue. I think it's more important that we just decide on whether we think it's appropriate to take this action or not.
And they can all reapply. I mean, that's the thing. Is anybody that still wants to do it reapplies. And
Absolutely.
A question, have there been any comments from there's one letter here from someone.
Yes.
Have there been any other comments from anybody on the committee? Because this has been in discussion for a while.
The one letter, and during the meeting there was a comment from one person regarding the ordinance and what it specified, and that was about it. I've had personal discussions with I think 3 or 4 of the committee before last week just to get their feel of what in general, it's like, ooh, it's kind of a little bit of a sting, but at the same time, there's an understanding of why we're doing it. I think I felt that.
I'm curious. I realize he's not here, but I'm curious if we have a feeling from what the harbor master thinks.
That kind of puts Steve in a bit of an awkward position because he's the staff member who works directly with whoever's there. So I purposely asked Steve asked not to come, and I purposely said that's probably better that you don't.
I think so.
I think it's better not to get him involved.
I have to agree. Good question, though, but I have to agree. I think he is a key member, not a member of the committee, but certainly attends the meetings and a very important element.
But him and Liz now are. It certainly impacts them quite a bit because
dramatically
they work directly with them.
And now, I'm assuming this came from a recommendation from the town manager.
Yeah, I think that there's been some, there have been some difficult meetings, there have been some difficult issues that they've grappled with, and I think sort of hard time kind of moving things forward. And like Bob said, there's no one individual, there's no one reason. I think really just kind of hitting the reset button and making a change might help kind of break some of the logjam.
Right.
And I think that's kind of the reason.
Right.
And like everybody said, this isn't ideal. Everybody respects the fact that there are members on there who have served, as long as Randy, and deserve recognition from the town. They've done a wonderful job, but it's really just, there's a dynamic now where there's an impasse, and it's really hard to move things forward. And I think that unfortunately, the only fair way to move past that is to completely reset the table. So.
Yeah, there are other towns or neighboring towns who have eliminated their harbor committees, and that's not being recommended here.
I don't think that's what we want to do, and I do hope that, a lot of, we get a lot of participation from
reset thing too. Did Rockford eliminate their committee, or did they just I think they just reconstituted it.
Reconstituted. Well, anyway, that's the action on the table.
I would move that we move ahead with reconstituting the Harbor Committee.
I second that motion.
In discussion, the only thing I'll add again is that if this is approved, that I would have Richard to contact all the current members and alternates for this action immediately, and to tell them that the door is open for applications. Any other comments?
I will say I get it. I don't feel good about it. I will abstain from this vote.
You vote negative.
I'll vote negative.
All right. All those in favor? You're no coward. All opposed, 4-1. That's okay, that's okay, Jenny. I don't like.
Quite right with me, I don't know.
Abstentions are just, I generally
These
don't.
people have
I
worked
think I
really
read that you're
hard.
not allowed to abstain unless you can document a conflict of interest or.
However, we will allow abstentions if you take us all to dinner. No,
We're out of here. No. I used to try to abstain all the time, and then somebody told
No,
me
you're
I
not
was like
supposed to.
breaking the law or
No,
something.
I'm happy to vote again.
we're
I
going
mean,
to sue us, but, okay,
it's-
thank you so much, all of you, but
respect for
we want to move on to the approval of rates for the summer recreation program.
Oh,
One thing I just want to add, there are
Hi,
the
Jeremy.
times when we have to make tough
Getting out
decisions.
before the snow.
And it's a hard thing, but sometimes we have to
Yeah, I
take those
agree,
votes.
I agree,
That's why we're elected.
yeah, that wasn't.
If it's about
Pleasant.
progress, then it's,
Thanks, Richard.
that's the answer.
Thanks, Ray.
We can always go back to them all and beg for them to come back. And
That's true. My brothers are.
That's going to speak to the recreation program?
Yep.
Ms. Ward. And Ms. Ward, I've been cautioned to tell you to talk right into that microphone. There you go.
Actually,
that to Stevie.
question about the
You don't even
microphones, if you're
imagine.
holding it like this, are you
Boy, Steve,
making
Steve.
secondary noise?
Could be.
Microphone.
So,
I was told by, Pat said that there was no problem with holding it because
if you hold it on the base, but if you're holding it up here and doing this, I'm wondering if.
All the feet.
No, can we get some feedback from, my microphone?
Everybody's saying this.
Yeah, you're gonna get some feedback.
Only one way to find out.
Hearing the select board, the microphones are working real well, but that's not.
Okay.
Anyhow, Ms. Ward, we want to talk a little bit about the approval for the, we discussed this before, the rates for the summer recreation program.
Yes, so last time I was here, we talked about the partnership we had with the Y. We have come full circle with that, and I'm here to propose a tier pricing for summer rec. Blueberry Cove and Tanglewood currently do a tiered system. It's a confidential way that families can choose what they can afford. And I'm not sure if Audra shared that tier with you folks in the packet?
It's in our packet.
Okay, you have it, okay. And it basically reflects, it doesn't reflect the child at camp at all. It reflects what the family can pay, basically.
The only thing I didn't, and I love, that's like just exactly in line with what I'm hoping for all, maybe in the Snow Bowl or, but so that's awesome. I didn't know that there were any other camps that did that, so.
There are quite a few
Thanks for-
YMCA's that do it. Melissa helped us with the tier setting, and she showed us a few YMCA's that do it. Plus, I've sent my children to Blueberry Cove, and I remember going through this process saying, what tier do I choose?
Kind of the honor system, right? Yeah.
It is.
Has worked before, and that's the way the other ones do it. It's the
Y's
Great,
actually found it's
I
been
can't-
really successful.
Tangled, same thing.
Mark?
As the person that had the original discussion about, the fees that, how expensive camps are, I think this is a really good solution. Thank you for coming up with this.
Yeah.
I think this helps a lot.
Feels a lot better.
A good precedent has been
I
set
mean,
with.
fundamentally, you've gone from $50 to $75 a week,
At the lowest, at the lowest tier, yes.
lowest tier.
A lot better.
There is still an increase, and that,
Is.
a lot of that, I think I heard, I don't know, I can't remember if we talked about it in a meeting or not, but a lot of that has to do with the minimum wage increase,
Yes.
which I thought was
Yes.
important for,
Yes.
that it's not just us saying, we need to, make money on this, it's just pretty
need
much forced
right.
budget-wise.
Yeah.
And it's going to continue to go up.
So that's because
Oh,
of
yeah.
what has been what's kicking in now, or what has kicked
Well,
in,
it
or?
was $9, and it went up $1 every year, so now we're at 11. It's going to be 12 next year.
And we didn't immediately change
Right,
prices
we haven't
when-
changed these prices since
Oh,
probably
well,
08, 10 years, probably.
11.
$55 a week if you've signed up at the six-week rate, so $300. That's it's a great deal.
Yeah.
And I think $450 is still a great deal.
It's still going to be hard for some people, but I think this is a fair compromise.
And we still have
tier.
the ability to, if folks need help with that lowest tier,
Yep.
to come in
Yep.
with assistance.
We should get that out a little bit more, that Camden residents can apply for those town trust
That on
funds.
the registration form.
Yes.
So what's going to happen going forward with the YMCA is Camden resident children will register through Holly and I at the office. We'll do the marketing for the Camden children. We can take up to 55 full-time campers for any of the camps
Great.
that are offered.
That's wonderful. Is the tier 3 is subsidized?
Yes.
Is the
It looks like-
subsidization the same as we subsidization before?
I mean, the only difference is the increase to account for minimum wage, but I mean.
Okay, that's the same. That's,
Very
So if there's campers that are looking for assistance in addition to the lowest tier, they would
Come in
talk
and-
to you during the registration
Yep,
process?
or I'll have it on the form saying you can go to the town office for more general assistance.
Great.
I'd like to make a motion that we authorize this tiered pricing for Camden residents for the Camden Summer Recreation.
I will second that and thank Beth for her hard work.
yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
yeah, for all the hard work, including this weekend.
Yeah.
Any more discussion on this motion? No, all those in favor? 5-0. Thanks,
Thank
Beth,
you.
thank you very much.
PS Toboggan Nationals went off. Very good.
It was
Glad
great.
you guys won.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Glad you guys
Great
won.
time.
super warm out.
But
It wasn't windy at all.
No.
The wind, everyone was having a
Love
blast.
Chicago.
That was
Grueling.
fast ice.
Beth, before you run away, how did February 6th work out?
Oh, right.
We had 29 Camden tickets.
29.
And how was that administratively?
It was okay. Unfortunately, it was the Wednesday before Toboggan Nationals, and we were like,
Busy?
a
Yeah.
little busy. But we worked it out. Camden residents came up to the office. We verified their residency. We got them a ticket for the day. I think going forward, any of those people that come back won't have to check in at the main office. They just need to go to the ticket because we can
ticket.
pull them up.
How
Tomorrow's going to be a snow day, and I'm sure we'll see some more Camden residents.
did people feel about it? What was the feedback?
What most people came in to the office saying, we'd like to take advantage of our free ticket. Thank you. I had folks that hadn't been out since high school, and they're in their mid-60s and, things like that.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's
My
exactly.
doctor's office last week, he moved to town this year. He's a brand new, moved with his whole family. And he
Oh, I think I know who that is.
used to like, we were just chatting sort of at the end of my appointment, and he said, we're going to go skiing because Camden residents can now ski free on Wednesdays. And I was like, oh, well, yes, I thought that, heard that, so.
Did you get a free appointment from him because of this?
It goes that way.
Insurance probably gets
Sorry.
involved.
Main
Maybe.
health is like, nope.
Interesting to see if it's mostly people, I mean, I think our hope was that it's mostly people that wouldn't have been taking advantage of it otherwise.
Not part of the meeting.
And
Try to get a sense of
I'm
that.
sure we'll lose some revenue from people that would have otherwise bought tickets, but,
Hopefully it's outweighed.
Weather dependent.
right.
Oh, totally,
And if you
totally.
need help, one thing I don't know if we thought about completely was just the extra burden of figuring it all out and
Yes.
having to deal with.
Yes.
So I think, you should speak up, and we should have to go and help or something if
Well,
you
we-
need, like,
we
if
did-
you need help on.
The one that I'm a little concerned with is the Wednesday of February.
Yeah, we did talk about that, Beth. We need, Audra and I were there, and we said we would send, if you would send some help from the town office.
I just don't have space for help.
Right, that's the thing. It's
Oh, I
like, would
know.
we have to be in the
outside.
lodge? Like,
Outside in a tent.
you can send people to my
Terrifying.
car in the
Have
parking
to get
lot.
another
but-
trailer.
Thanks so much, Beth.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
One more comment, Beth. You weren't here when I started out, because you walked in afterwards. I thanked you and Holly for a very successful weekend. I think both at my son skied. It was terrific. The Toboggan Festival went off just wonderfully well. I think it was an incredibly successful weekend. So thank you for all the hard work from you and all the staff, because I know a lot of people worked really hard.
Yes.
So-
And all the volunteers, too, that we rely on.
So
for that.
thank everybody that you see in our behalf, because it's a great thing for the town.
Well,
And the
Media
fact that
coverage
you
is
sold out, the toboggan slots is
Yep.
amazing. I think everybody that I talked to had a wonderful time.
Yeah, and I think it was really well attended. Early numbers, we sold over $13,000 worth of parking and I've never seen
Wow.
it hit 10. So I think because of how cold and
Yeah.
windy it wasn't, people
Yeah.
were coming and going.
Yeah.
And they didn't mind paying the $10 to park and then leave in an hour. And that parking spot then became
Oh, right.
available. So it worked out.
So true.
Yeah.
Particularly thank the people that are standing out there collecting the money
The
for the parking.
Rotary. The Rotary gets half of that money, so
I know,
it's
but
to their benefit.
they earned it.
I want to talk about that.
Yeah,
a little
me
bit.
either.
Okay.
All right.
I have some ideas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did.
Right, not, all right, not on the agenda, but we have just a homework thing to do to talk about workshops.
Yes.
Potentially two. First would be the, probably the nearer term one because of the schedule, which is capital
any
improvement
more
program workshop, which I think Audra's talked about doing next week.
For what workshop?
A capital improvement. We, basically, we're at the
Round
11th.
two of-
We're at the, well, round 3, actually.
This is what I'm putting in.
Yeah, because there's a lot of dynamics going on, which I know some of, and not all of.
So Monday's a holiday,
Well, that doesn't count to us.
right?
Okay, hold on.
I mean, you'd look at your calendars, and let's come up with, if we can, something next week.
Next week I'm free any day
I know
except
it's
for
vacation
Friday.
week. It's vacation week for,
Oh, my kids will be a delightful contribution to the,
We were hoping
Planning.
to try to get out of town for a couple of days.
let's take a look at next week, which is the 18th, week of the 18th.
Or the end of this week, if,
Oh,
I'm gone on Friday and I'm gone on Monday.
I mean, I can do the 14th.
depends on the time of day
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, I can't.
I am booked straight through this week. I could do the,
This
how
week
about
is-
the 19th? How does that?
Okay, let me
the
take a look,
19th?
let me take a look.
It's
19th,
great for me.
Tuesday, 19th.
Anytime the 19th.
What time of day?
After 4 o'clock, before that's really
good for
hard
you.
for me.
I mean, it's just not, that's not good, but
That's not good for me.
Why don't we
at
do
all.
early morning?
that is
Early?
excellent.
How early you want to do it?
9?
I'm happy with that.
That, yep.
A little bit earlier would even be better.
I'm asking,
I can make that work
which can you make work?
earlier. I can, yeah.
8:30, Mark?
8:30, 8 o'clock. What about, are you coming off a shift that day?
Nope, no.
I can't do
You
8
cut me as early as you want me.
because they,
30. 8:30.
On Tuesday?
8:30 Tuesday.
The 19th?
The 19th, correct.
Okay.
February 19th. Okay, one
unless the
down.
bus could like pick my kids up here or
One
something.
down.
Ethan can watch your kids.
What did I do today?
Really?
Yeah, 8:30
Vacation.
on the 19th.
Oh, I don't have,
What?
oh, this is vacation, so I don't have
Yeah.
to. Oh, so I was only thinking about the bus and getting my kids to school. I could do 8,
I could do 8. I would do 8 if everyone wants.
Is it better for you?
if that helps you out a lot, Mark.
Because it depends, because my wife still has to go to work, and my son's going to sleep in. We hate to leave him before he wakes up, so let's keep it at 8:30.
Got it.
Okay. Otherwise,
All
maybe
right.
Ethan would like a job watching kids that are slightly younger. Could pitch that.
Yeah, Daddy.
He seems responsible.
The other one we had discussed
Great kid. He
very,
was funny.
very lightly was this idea of getting together to talk a little bit more about the solar initiative, which is important to the town, obviously, and we don't want to understate that. But we've been a lot of questions I've heard from many of you about the solar farm, and I think it's very important for us to have, at least if we have questions, to make sure that they're consistent. What I'm concerned is going to happen is somebody's going to come and talk to us about something, then we're going to start throwing questions out, and it's going to feel like a mumble bleep. And I don't want to go there. I think that's unfair.
I think what's been written up in the solar power feedback is really good information to research and go through.
But I think there may be more, Mark. I'm just saying, that was just a preliminary draft, and I
Right.
want to, one, in the workshop to clarify the draft, to add any items you might want to add, or delete any item you may want to delete, because we need to have, again, this comes back to, again, I want to keep restating this, we have activities going on, planning and economic development, and corralling all this stuff together, plus the communities, is a real workload. And I don't think the town still is used to that planning and economic development activity being as big a piece of the town as it's become. And it's no criticism, again, of anybody, but things change slowly, and I'm trying to integrate that. For example, also on the 26th, I believe, we're going to be having CDAC come in, and Mark's liaison to that, talk about some of their economic development things and get them into the loop also.
Good idea.
Yeah, I think that's all part of this thought process. So what day might work for this for you all. I think next week's a killer.
So this is an
I
addition.
can't do another one next week.
No,
but-
I agree. I agree. I think we need to look out. Remember, I pressed, Audra's pressing because the 28th of,
Well, 21st is when I get the budget books.
right,
everyone.
21st is the budget books, 28th is our first meeting on the budget. So I would suggest we do this maybe the week of March 4th.
I feel like I'm just going to like overflow a little. This is another workshop just to talk about the. I mean, could we just even just say a couple words here? Like, I mean, I wrote that up based on sort of the questions that I have.
And
Like, well, these are, you know,
Some of
that's
mine, too.
sort of what I've heard. And, I mean, I think we could just talk a little bit about, I mean, for me, an ideal situation for Sagamore, and I want to be able to tell them something so that they know collectively, like, what the barriers to moving forward quickly are, and we should make sure that we kind of understand what we're all on the same page. For me, if I love the idea of solar panels there. I'd like to see if we could combine that with our affordable housing issue. So it's like, can we have little houses or something like that underneath those solar panels? And could CDAC combine with the Energy Committee and figure out how we can try to solve both problems? And I think that would be, I mean, a way to make a lot of people
I
happy.
totally agree, but remember, what you're discussing here is exactly what the purpose of the workshop
How
would be.
about,
It would be to
Right.
discuss those things, just to lay them out so that we collectively have, because we could try.
But if we could give that document to the Energy Committee now, I mean, would that help them? Let's hear it from her.
I was going to say, Bob and I discussed this last week. He asked me to go to the Energy Committee and gather information about what they're doing. So they've delivered some information to me. I haven't had a chance to, put it all together. So about, the options and what the options are, good, bad, how we can move panels, do whatever. So I'm just combining that. So, I can't talk about it tonight because I don't have all the information, but if we have a meeting, I'll be able to have more information about what works for Sagamore, what wouldn't work, and just to move forward.
It's a collective effort. It's a collective effort. I agree with you, Allison. I think I could state what I see is economic development and planning is not about grabbing one element and seeing where it goes. Unfortunately, to do it correctly, it takes some time. It takes some time to look absolutely moderately priced housing with solar. Other alternatives could be. I believe that our role is to make sure that we ensure that whomever, whether it's CDAC, Planning and Economic Development, or the Energy Committee, that we've looked at all of these ideas and determined which one or ones might be the best for the town of Camden. That's really what the objective is. And I think nothing the Energy Committee has done has been not good. It's all been very good. Got to get back to my microphone. But I think that that was the purpose of it. I know I don't want another workshop either, but I think it's probably to bring in maybe even CDAC or Energy Committee people, if they want to attend and listen, that's fine too. And want Jeremy there to listen, because there's a lot of activity going on that people just don't know about. But the most important, the select board has to come up with, in my opinion, some what the process is going forward in the direction. And you just brought one of the good ones up as a good example.
Yeah, I guess that's we as a board haven't really discussed in detail what our preferred vision is for that property.
What are deal breakers or not deal?
Right. Right.
To me, I
Right.
think that's worthy of the work. That's the most important piece that comes out of it for me.
Yeah,
is the vision for what works and what doesn't. Yes.
And the worst, I don't want to see any group that's worked so hard come to us and say, can you approve this? And we're saying, wait a minute, did you think about what this Charlie and Sally are doing over here? That's not appropriate. That's inefficient. I think it's somewhat even disrespectful. I think we need to do it through a workshop. I think
So we're
it'd be smart.
gathering.
It's just that they're concerned about this deadline, this date, and so I don't,
Okay.
it makes me a little bit concerned that we're like kicking it down the road to,
Okay.
I get that we need a workshop, but I'm
Okay.
just wondering I just wanted to say a couple things and
Okay.
put,
Okay.
so that if they
Agreed.
sort of know where our
Okay.
thinking is at, and it's not,
Okay.
we don't end up saying, well, we just really need to plan for this, and the result of that is that they feel like they're going to miss their deadline that they feel is
Understood.
important. And
I think it's a good comment because I would agree. I just have, we could just briefly discuss that. I think that from my perspective, the town, we as a select board have to ensure that all of the elements are done. We have limited land available in this town to do anything with, and there are needs for that land. What is the best one or combination of needs? We don't have that yet. We're working on it. And to that end, you bring up a good point. If somebody's going to raise a flag that we have to make a decision by a certain date, spent my whole life people telling me I had to make a decision by whenever. I have never let that affect my decision making.
I know, but the town has been planning what to do with Sagamore Farm for
I agree with that too.
a crazy long time, so I can really sympathize with.
Since 1946.
Right,
Come
so
on,
there's
we have plenty of time.
I think we can impose a little bit of deadline on ourselves and to say, if there's an idea that the select board could all get behind, for me, I would picket the streets if it could be solar panels and housing, that.
I mean, I would agree. I would like to see some kind of a sustainable operation up there, which sustainable means to me means solar.
Revenue generating.
Well, it could be.
Or just need solving, solving multiple needs.
It could be multiple needs, but it needs to integrate the solar thing. And by the way, I believe strongly also that I don't think we could be a lot more proactive in helping identify other alternatives for more solar operations in the town. We talked about in your list about some of these places that we investigated before, the bus barn, the waste management. Somebody told them structurally it's not going to work. Yeah, I don't agree. Somebody told me the salt and sand barn had to be torn down, and that's not been torn down. So, I think we can help. Maybe this is not a solar farm that is in one place. Maybe it's in 3 places, but accomplishes the same thing. I think there are creativity we can do with other lands, some of which are identified on that list and may not even be complete.
We want solar panels on our parking lots we just approved. But
one thing I'll add about that is, and I know the Energy Committee, we've discussed it, is it's not about this solar farm or that solar farm. It's about using as much solar farm. It's about in addition to, not one or the other, because we need as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, and I think we can accomplish that. And by the way, there's also a financial element to that, because even though solar is a great alternative, the cost of doing one big whopper is different financially to the town than is doing some pieces of it flowing out over time, because I'm only talking about financial, not the end run. And at the end of the day, solar saves you money, but there is a buyout involved in this stuff. And for that kind of a farm, it ain't cheap. But that has to at least be looked at as part of the evaluation. So, but I agree. I personally, from my perspective, I can't turn to a taxpayer in this town and say, I'm not going to do due diligence because somebody has an idea of something that's some critical deadline downstream that I have to achieve. A failure failure to plan on your part doesn't constitute an emergency on my part.
Right. I mean, and I tried to find the other day the original proposal from the Energy Committee that did put this phase 2 farther out from what I remember, the expansion. And now I'm just confused. I tried really hard to look at all the laws and what's changing and what's not. And it seems like the administration's getting a lot more friendly, and that we are actually probably going to see legislation that makes it more advantageous. And I personally wasn't able to find the deadline stuff.
The reason for the deadline is not what's going to the state. It's the federal support is going away. Is decreasing after the end of 2019.
But I guess the problem is I don't think there's going to be a state level program that matches that in time. So it's kind of like, do we rush and get in under the federal program, or do we wait till there's something more favorable from the state?
Yeah, I remember there's a lot of things going on in parallel. Democrats currently have a green plan that's being proposed in Congress. Where it goes, I don't know. But the stuff is going to develop over time. But I agree also. My contacts through the state saying, this stuff is not going to happen that fast.
Is there a phase 2 that's actually down on paper that this is the plan, this is what we want to move forward with, or is it theoretical at this point?
No, they do have a plan.
And that's exactly what they want to move forward with?
When they did the build out at Sagamore to start it, they purposely built in the ability to expand by making sure that they had third phase power availability built into it, so they could expand on a quick basis. at the
Sorry,
right
but-
time.
I looked and I kept getting a
I'm
404
working-
error message.
I'm
when I-
getting a whole bunch of stuff. That's why I wanted to have a workshop, so I can get it all together.
I think we should too. I just wanted
think we're
to
getting
talk
way
about our
down a
tiny bit.
rabbit hole.
No, I agree with Allison,
like
because
having that
if there are
workshop.
expectations that it's going to get turned over in 2 weeks, that we're going to make a decision on Sagamore, it's probably not going to happen. Of
course not.
But there is quite a bit going on that needs to be coordinated. And by the way, the chair of the Energy Committee and I had a conversation about that, and totally in favor of, and trying hard to communicate across the spectrum of various players, asking who should I talk to on the blah, blah, blah. And so that's a good thing. I just think we need to focus and carry it forward. But yeah, you're right. There's no way that at least I can look at us making a decision based on some potential drop dead dates, because municipalities don't move that fast. State governments move even less fast. So I think if we could discuss some of this during the workshop, but I want to.
Also, I don't want to schedule a workshop until we have also, so that, well, we can schedule it. That's fine. I think we should. But we asked, when Anita brought it up,
Yeah.
like a month or two ago,
Yeah.
and she was like, I just want to check in and make sure that
she
maybe
said, "I need
and we
direction."
said, please provide us with something written that we can review ahead of time. And I don't quite understand why that.
I went back and asked for that, and they're supplying with that, and I'll put it all together and get it out to everybody when I have all the pieces.
Okay.
We should look out into, I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry,
I'm
Tim.
sorry, Jenna, go
Should we
ahead.
schedule a workshop instead of continuing a discussion about something that wasn't
Yeah.
on our agenda?
Yeah, I think we need to talk about maybe the week of March 4th.
Yeah, that
Or
was
11th,
where I was-
March 4th or 11th.
March looks good.
Remember, we have all the Thursdays in that month, we already have a budget committee, including the 28th of February. So, I mean, doesn't mean we shouldn't do it that week, but I'm thinking March, does the week of the 4th work for anybody? Any
Sure.
days? Or maybe on the 7th?
7th is a Thursday. That's
Okay, all right, let's not kill ourselves.
6th,
Um,
then we get Tuesday, Wednesday,
we need
Thursday.
to-
If we could, I know that Mark doesn't want, if we could do it not at night, if we
But
have
the-
2 other night meetings.
The problem with
rather
that
than us
is
coming
we're
in
having a
5
workshop
hours.
and we're inviting people from the other committees. They need to be here,
Right, committees meet all times of day, though.
I know, but the primary people, like
No.
pizza school teacher, we need to have ability.
Remember, this is a select board workshop. Public comment is okay, but if we're not going to get into a energy committee meeting, CDAC meeting, planning and economic development meeting. This is to identify our feelings about where this whole initiative should go. Not to be, it's public, it's going to be streamed thanks to Allison's new system.
No, it's not. Thanks to Juniper.
Thanks to Juniper and Allison too, and Audra and everybody. But I think we can do it any time of day. It'll be streamed. It's not going to be a closed thing. We just need to do it when we can make it work. And it sounds like the only times we can make it work is 8:30 in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning on a given day. Because you have a schedule of business, you have a schedule, I have a schedule, everybody's got a schedule. So-
I can be flexible sometimes. I just can't schedule night meetings all,
Why don't we do 9 o'clock on the 6th?
Wednesdays, not Tuesdays.
Oh, you don't like that day, okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's cool.
You can do Wednesdays.
I'm
Again,
well,
one of the suggestions you said, maybe we should have other people from the other committees. And I have had comment about having workshops during the workday, and because people can't watch it and they can't attend, and that has been a problem for people. I have had that complaint.
people with kids at dinner time also complain,
Yeah,
so.
I've heard all, again, I want to emphasize, this is the intent, the objective here is for the select board to put its head together to come up with a agreed plan of what is expected, where things are going. Maybe I'm not paraphrasing that correctly, but that's the purpose. So how about the 8th? I'm in the wrong goddamn month.
Tuesdays are the best days for me if we're going to do it early.
Basically, Tuesday is the select board meeting that day. How about,
The 12th, is that too far out?
Both doesn't work for me.
what days work for you, the week of the 11th? Taylor?
Mondays work for me as well.
Monday-
Mondays and Tuesdays are the only days.
Monday the 11th?
That works.
Everybody, 9 o'clock? It's Allison?
8:30?
But how you guys call it? My mornings are easiest for me.
Sure, I might be a few minutes late. but-
March 11th, 8:30 a.m. Thank you so much. And with that,
What's this? This is
solar workshop,
solar workshop.
work. workshop on 8:30 that morning.
Are we discussing just solar, or are we
Wasn't there, I swear there was something
Sagamore?
else. Oh, yeah, Sagamore. I thought it was Sagamore.
Well, it's the whole, it's part of it. I called it solar because that was it, that was started it.
Maybe
But it's
misleading.
more development workshop.
Oh, all development?
What the hell? No, I'm sorry. No, I think it's principally focused on the activities and stuff that's going on around Sagamore. We can discuss anything, but I think,
So we'll call it Sagamore Workshop.
okay, that's fine.
Or I really want to,
Okay. I'm at 8:30.
Mark, do you think we'll have those documents from the Energy Committee
Oh, yeah.
prior to
Oh,
that
yeah.
meeting?
I'll have that way ahead of time.
fire.
That'd be great.
I'm a slow reader.
Thanks for doing that, Mark.
Yes, thank you.
So 8:30, I have 8:30 PM because I can't count. And with that, unless there's anything else, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the select board meeting.
So moved.
Moved.
All-
Second.
All those in favor?
Okay.
Janice, thank you so much.
Thank you, Janice.
Thanks,
And
Janice.
we made it out before the snow.
Thanks, Beth.
Thank you all so
My
much for being so
unfounded concerns.
diligent today. That was very, I'm
Okay, so we're
surprised it's 9
still,
o'clock.
go ahead and just turn your microphones off to really.